Okay. Thanks, mate. Okay, so that in case we get somebody archaeologist is looking around in about 10,500 years and they find their videos, they can read all about learning about tarot. Okay, so does anybody have, I'm going to actually hand this over to Ari for a moment. I don't know what's happening with my camera online. It's fucking me about. Excuse my voice this morning. I'm just completely immobilized by hay fever. Okay, just so you know that that's what this crunchiness is all about. Yeah. So work to do with particularly to do with the Pied Piper. If you can just fill me in on what was found. So I'm just going to hand this over to Ari because we've been doing a bit of discussing during the week and I don't know whether anybody else has got to it, but it's well worth discussing. So who found out what?
Okay. So that was interesting, the Pied Piper thing. You want me to talk about what I found first, or do you want to just let everyone else jump in and see what everyone else found and then go from there?
There's a chat to one side.
If anyone wants to jump in, if anyone did some research on the Pied Piper and just discovered anything interesting and you want to throw it out there, feel free.
Why does my camera on the fucking phone keep dropping out? Anybody got any idea?
Still see it on here.
Hey,
we can still see you. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Does it go back?
It goes black every now and again.
That means the timer's on.
Time is on. How do I turn the timer off?
And settings and stuff. I could try and do it.
Settings.
Screen timeout or something it might say.
No. I'll just leave that somewhere. Okay. Anybody? Looks like it's you, Ari. Nobody got it. Did anybody go through the Pied Piper and have a look this week and see whether or not there was some relativity?
I had a little look. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Yeah, the things I found interesting about it were the fact that the rats and the children, in both cases, they seem to be lost, but one continued on, which I thought was pretty interesting. And also that the children who they thought were lost popped back up later on in Transylvania and nobody knew where they'd come from. I thought that was an interesting kind of connection to the history story we were listening to. I also thought it was interesting that the mayor was so fat and this plague was coming down upon this town. I wondered if it was something in terms of the transition.
Can we not do this? Okay, I don't think we need to do this. No, the whole point was the date. The whole point was the date. And to look at the history because of, I must explain, I will go backwards and forwards between several different subjects simply because, or even I'll drop 1,000 years every now and again and I'll flip across to another 1,000 years from there because it all ends up blending in anyway. And what you're going to find is certain people have got, there's written information, for example, when Julius Caesar invaded Britain the first time, and there's written information regarding when Claudius invaded Britain for the second time. There's nothing to indicate that everything was peaceful in between, and there's nothing at all historically to indicate that disruption wasn't continuous. There were some comments that came through to me regarding the big leap from the diaspora in Jerusalem to when Moses, somebody made a comment about Moses popping his head up in the 1300s and all the space in between. And I didn't have my whip with me to take it out on you, but I felt like it because we all know that it's not a matter of not knowing what's been happening between the year sort of 56, 65, 55 of the Common Era and the 1300s. We know there's been a crusade. We know that there's been 2 popes put in power. There's a lot of history that I don't need to cover for any of you because you're all intelligent people. This is all rather important for you to actually think about what you need to know and how expansive your consciousness needs to be at following these things through. But no, the date that's, that's at the end of the Pied Piper is really significant. And I'll just hand that across to Ari, please. Can you tell what you found, please, Ari, in the end, because Ari couldn't sleep with a lot of it.
I know, it's interesting. So I kept on thinking about things as I was trying to go to sleep. It just wasn't happening. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to get up and I'm just going to keep researching. I'm going to pick apart the poem in different ways or things that pop out to me. And I started researching the name of the river. And first I located where it was on a map, the whole thing. And then I started looking at all different aspects of like the colors of the cloak, the red and the yellow of the cloak, and then the other cloaks that were being worn. And I started digging around then, and I was looking into medieval colors and what they mean. And, you know, then I was going into the Inquisition and what happened as a result of the Inquisition and what time period that was. And I was like, okay, so this was based roughly on a time period of around the Inquisition, and what does that mean? And then I was going through the poem more, and I found the date, and the date was in there, and I was like, well, this is really obvious that it's mentioning a particular date. And then I started researching, okay, what happened on this date through Europe? What was happening at this date? And a whole list of things came up, and it was clear to me that it was about a people being either dispersed, or that people that migrated, or people that were, you know, invaded. Or I knew that it was because it's talking about a group of people that had to leave or go somewhere. So, and then I also started researching, I don't know, you go through lots of different random links. It just keeps you taking you to different places, and you can follow many different threads. And I kept on following different threads, kind of like that Y node theory exercise where we could follow different things.
Yep.
Yeah. And then one thread took me to the surnames of the people that were in some way related to the Polish or something. And I was like, I wonder if this is related to the Jewish people, because, you know, there's a lot of Jewish people that are in Poland or whatever. I remember there was some connection with the Jewish with Poland. So then I started thinking about the diaspora and the whole thing to do with the you know, people having to disperse or leave a place. So it took me down many paths, but ultimately that's what I did to break apart the poem, and just kept on digging and following those threads until something started to make any kind of a sense. And as I was saying to Law before, like, I know that not everything I was thinking was necessarily right or wrong, but the idea is also to break away those ideas of right or wrong and just do the research and just dive in and just see what happens. And that's it. So I knew that I wasn't going to be right on everything, and I put that in bunny ears, because it doesn't matter about being right about it. What matters is what comes up if you follow certain threads. So that's what I found was really interesting. And all through the week, it was a similar thing with the Kabbalah, things that we talked about last week. And think when I went over the videos, the same things kept on happening, these body reactions that were not necessarily unsettling me, but it was like an excitement that I had to get up and do certain things. I had to research it. I had to know more, follow some threads, and I thought it was interesting, the whole exercise. So that's my 2 cents.
The whole exercise is based initially on your capacity to research more than Wikipedia, and your capacity to be scholars. This is a scholarship. This is a way of working with, you've got to get your synapses happening. Anybody who thought that an advanced tarot masterclass was going to be about reading the cards only, it is, but it's much bigger than that. It's much more vast. It's like a very, I suppose, an untouched mother forest, insofar as each plant supports every other plant, supports every animal person, every bird person, every fish person in the river person themselves, the lakes within that forest system that hasn't been interfered with or destroyed. So all the information that hasn't been bastardized, you will find it if you hunt it. The problem that all of you face, more than any other problem that I can come across at the moment, is that most of the material that in the so-called distant past we found in books is now non-existent. A lot of these books have been removed from the general landscape of your capacity to find out which books when. nowadays you're relying on the internet for your information, which is a detriment to you insofar, and also the fact that we are separate and we can't come together on a Saturday, rainy Saturday afternoon, for example, and rip to pieces one particular text. For example, Joseph Campbell going into discussing Assyria, going into having a discussion about, particularly in their book, Occidental Mythology. If you can get hold of that, it is a very, very good read. And Joseph Campbell, of course, wrote Hero with a Thousand Faces. There's a lot of their material that's very, very significant and important to read. But a vast list, difficult. One of the books that I wrote is called Magdalene, the Witch of the Grail Heresies. And to be able to write that book, which was based on a Kabbalistic ritual working, yes, of many years prior, to be able to write that book, it was necessary, for example, for me to work in collaboration with the librarians in the Byron region who were up for it, and to sleep with approximately 30 books a night, 20, 30 books a night, and to go through the bibliographies of the books that I was reading and then get those books, and then go through the bibliographies of those books and then get those books. And what happens when you've got a vast amount of information like that is what you seek is the thread that unites them. There'll be one thread that seems to weave through each of the books, and that's what you're looking for. And the same thing will eventually apply to the patterns that you're looking at in tarot, because everything is about patterns. We put up the image of the Mandelbrot set so that you'd recognize how we're going deeper and deeper and deeper into each subject by following the patterns that are available to us. So what was important about the Pied Piper is that the Pied Piper, as an exercise, came out of a tarot collective back in the Byron region many years ago. There was an astrologer who was doing the course with us, very tall, gangly man, very interesting human being, and James reminded us for some inane reason of the Pied Piper. Yes, he had a little look about him that was a bit like a scarecrow, or even a little bit like a grasshopper or praying mantis. But somewhere the trigger was that particular poem that also led on to a huge festival, by the way, that we put in the Byron area, because this is the way tarot works. Tarot is another word for life, or Pachamama, if it is what it is. So that idea of the Pied Piper came, boom, fully formed, like pushing an infant from one's body, fully formed as an idea to pursue. And the one thing about that particular poem is the fact that I had a children's book from 1953, and I was curious to know if the Pied Piper in that story was reflected in the stories that are available today, and it isn't. Some of them are online right now. You can find the original Pied Piper story that talks about the 1376. And that particular year was the year that the Jews were all thrown out of Hungary. The exact date. So there's a message that can come through certain stories, and oral cultures use a thing called mnemonics. And mnemonics are tools for memorizing what you need to memorize, and you'll probably need to find them. At one stage, I needed to go to New Zealand, to Auckland, to grade up in my Iaido martial art that I'm working with. And the Auckland club was run by a person named Eddie Wong, despite the fact that I was not training with this person. Carla and I were there to do our grading. And Eddie Wong said to me, oh, to be able to grade the next aspect of your work, you're going to need to know the names of every aspect of this, not only the sword, but the sail, which is the sheath that the sword is in, and all the attachments that go with your sword. So you've got to do that between now and Friday. And that was Tuesday. So Carla and I spent the rest of the week. Carla sat in bed with the Green Mantle, Charles de Lind, and I used word association. For example, I'll just bring it out and show you. The very tip of a katana, for example, that little bit at the very end there, you see that little bit there? I'm not touching it with my fingers because I'm not going to fuck up my blade. That's called a kisaki. That's the only bit that does the cutting, by the way, when you're doing a slice in the Japanese martial arts. So you need one cut. But to be able to remember what that was called, the fact that it was called a kisake, why I had to word association and go kid sake. So that was that bit. On the saya, you can see that little piece there. That's called a nakago. And to remember that, I had to go, Chicago, Chicago, blah, 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 blah. So every single aspect of this sword that I had to translate through to be able to do my grading was done through word association. Will you be doing that? Not necessarily. But what you will be doing with each card is finding what sticks in your memory through researching the 78 cards, through researching the Kabbalistic associations, through researching the planetary associations and the numeric situations that go with that, and then through exploring where you may have been biased by an historic reference to religion or spirituality, even down to the New Age, which, remember, didn't even start before the 1970s. That's about it. It had a little taste in the 1960s, but that was sort of rubbish, and that was just also Aleister Crowley, and also Golden Dawn, and also Terry Dion Fortune and Doreen Valiente. If you want to go into looking at that, that's excellent. But the point of putting up an exercise like that is not for you to speculate. No. We clear? Thank you.
Yes,
It's find what is significant and then spread out from there. But your speculation, and a lot of you did, and I appreciate the work that you've done, but it's all speculation, and speculation is hypothetical, and it's also an assumption. Unless you can back it up, if you're just making shit up, you're making shit up. If you're coming across with a specific answer and then exploring the historicity from around that time sequence, we can look very clearly at the fact that prior to that diaspora in the 1300s was the Crusade years, and the years whereby we started with the Council of Nicaea, we spread to the Synod of Whitby. All of these were in almost what's happening at the moment historically. We can see the precedent of what was a new Catholic Church. By the way, there were several popes, as you probably all know. The new Catholic Church wanted everything to be in alignment. Can we please celebrate Easter at this particular day? So just to fill this in, the dudes from Europe went to Whitby, which is on the northeast coast of England, and they had a thing called a synod because they were out to attack what's called the Calidé, spelled C-U-L-D-E-E, Culdi, but it's called Calidé, and they were the Irish monks associated with the early Gnostic or even Christian church, but they had morphed in with the Irish mysticism and linked the two together. And of course, the bastards on the mainland were pissed off at this. You can't have individuality, not at this stage. And they had an historian with them, a person named Bede, also called the Venerable Bede or the Honorable Bede. That's like a mouthful. Who was there to record the history. And when the priests and I won't call them priests, bureaucrats of the church went to Whitby, they went with one particular purpose, and that was to go to Ireland and wipe out any of the monks that would refuse to conform. And so there's a quote by Bede that says, by way of a hostile sword. And most of the misappropriation of lands, people, and manipulation of indigenous cultures worldwide has been by way of a hostile sword, so that the military will go in first to an area, Cortez, South America, whatever, and do as much damage as possible before the missionaries come in, and then they start to invade the consciousness of an indigenous people with an ideology because the people are already weakened, their elders may be dead, their stories are ridiculed. Ridicule is a very, very cool tool, isn't it? It's a good way to really manipulate a culture into falling down and saying, oops, sorry about that. So that if I raise up a subject, backtrack, so they're from the Council of Nicaea, Synod of Whitby, big march towards neutralizing any objection to the parallelisms of the Catholic Church. Also, all through that, you'll probably research and find out about what's called the Magdalene legacy, that looks at the lily and the rose, which you'll find on a lot of tarot cards. You'll find that lily and the rose, magician, particularly the magician card. So what you're seeing is the remnants of the associations that invented this tarot pack in the first place, which we stick with Arthur Edward Waite's crew because they were associated with the Golden Dawn. And this information does go right back through the Rosicrucian eras, right back through the Masonic lodges to Kabbalah that came up, that raised itself up in the 1300s. And of course, around the time of the 1300s, you've got the Inquisition. The Inquisition began in the Languedoc. You probably know this. I'm going to tell you anyway. The Inquisition seemed to begin in the Languedoc, which is when the Knights Templar, who supposedly had scored this secret treasure in Jerusalem during the Crusades and had all of this wealth, they needed to be wiped out. Well, one of the actual Frankish or French king at the time went to the Catholic Church and said, I can't pay these Knights Templar back the money that I borrowed from them, so can you just please wipe them out? And that's pretty much what happened, according to history. History never necessarily brings up the people that escaped either. So a lot of the stories of wiping out, eradicating, decimating doesn't mention the escapees, because that it almost seemed as if the job wasn't done properly. But from the Inquisition, which was initially set up to eradicate what was called heretics, and heretics, by the way, the word heretic means the right to choose, people who are seemingly at odds with the doctrines, the enforced doctrines of a religious ideology, were put to the sword for their right to choose to do or to perceive things differently or to understand things differently. That moved in through history to the time when the Malleus Maleficarum was invented, and it was invented as an authorized form of waterboarding extraordinaire, to be able to eradicate anybody, again, who was at variance with the established hegemony of the Roman Catholic Church. And that included all midwives, herbalists, seers. All of us here would have all been wiped out. None of us would have lived to see tomorrow. The disparagement, the insults, the incredible insults are still available today. And so the Malleus Maleficarum was associated with the murder and slaughter of anybody who was heretical or anybody who was thinking independently, to the humility, chastity and obedience and poverty scenario that the church raised up, which is odd, but we won't even necessarily go into the historian that I did read, who suggested that the whole of Christianity was invented by Rome to sublimate an entire group of people by conning them into thinking that it was a really cool deal to be poor. And I don't know anybody who thinks that's a particularly good idea, okay, let alone being chaste. I mean, who doesn't like a really, really good fuck if you're young enough to get that? Okay, on that subject, so anything I raise up, I'm not going to necessarily do it to, like with the dot, it's not a trick. I actually want you to find the information that's available and then follow through with the research. Now, this is going to be very, very important for the rest of your lives if you choose to follow this way, which has got no name. How about that? And it's got no name because there's no doctrine. It's got no name because there's no hegemony. It's got no name because there's no ideology. There's no have-tos, except to not buy into stealing other people's ways. And that, I mean, it's entirely up to you if you want to talk about words like karma and aura and reincarnation, but I mean, you can't back them up by stating that they're a Western phenomenon. You can't back that up at all, because they have been misappropriated, and that's the truth. And if you choose to do so, that's also significant. A dear friend of mine, before I get on to today's work, a dear friend of mine was visiting her daughter here in Melbourne, who's one of my clients and a very, very cool person, and that person has just had a baby through in vitro with their partners of the same sex. And this dear old friend of mine, who's quite extraordinary, wonderful, was down visiting their daughter and their new grandchild. And there was a discussion went down because their partner is of a different indigeny to us. They're not a pale Anglo person. And this elder that I know very well has been working with dream catchers for decades, making them, selling them, beautiful, beautiful dream catchers. And this person, I'll give their name, it doesn't really matter. Their name is Mojo Juju. And Mojo had made the statement that you misappropriated this form of doing things. And there was a huge argument had happened. And then my friend came to visit me and sat on the couch and said, help me, defend me. And I'm going, I can't. Have you sat with the Plains Indians? Have you sat with the Native American people who make dream catchers and been taught by them and then asked their permission to make them and commercialize them or even give them to other people? That's almost the line that we get to, that we need to get to, that is important for us to get to, where we say, okay, I'm not going to go past this. And then when we do go into a different Indigenous form of spirituality or acknowledgement of art and creativity, to at least connect up with the people concerned and have a dialogue. That's just it. That's what I suggest. It's entirely up to you what you do, but there's a lot of witchy shops. Fuck me. There's a lot of witchy shops and they're selling crystals without explaining that they've come from blast sites. They're selling here in Melbourne at the Spellbox, they're selling owl feathers that are protected species here in Australia, and they're being sold for $70 odd. I saw the other day when the last time the shops were open. And I've just been curious to see what products are being sold. You get heaps and heaps of different boxes all sectioned up with their little stones for healing stones, etc. That's entirely up to everybody concerned, but just to recognize that it is trendy and that it is a marketplace. And of course, everybody's got to make a living, which is why I'm here with you and why we're going to cover part 2 of this today, which is numerology, which is associated with kabbalah, which of course is that. Hey, I got ahead of myself this week. I haven't got to beg somebody to draw this up for me while I'm talking to you. So there we go. That's the tree. Remember last week we had a look at this diagram and we decided that it can be looked at anyway, and that any particular circle on there can lead onto another tree, can lead onto another tree, can lead onto another tree. We haven't even covered the 4 worlds. We haven't even really covered the body of Adam and Kadmon. But again, I'm going to leave a lot of that up to you to fill in as we get further on, if we get time. So, you got your pens and paper ready?
Hey, Laura, I have a question.
Yes.
With regards to European history, I'm not very well versed with it. Which book could be a good starting point?
Joseph Campbell, Occidental Mythology.
Yeah.
Is a really good start.
Thank you.
And we can go from there. Yes, definitely.
Thanks.
Too many books recently, Anisha, what I did was to put together a bundle of about 150, 200 books. And I thought about, I went through a lot of upheaval in myself as to whether to put them in a library for other people to read or whether to destroy them. Now, I don't want to go doing anything like destroying books. And I know people have got to start somewhere. So they went to the library. What I didn't put on the street for people to have a look at. But there's so much research that I don't even know where to begin to tell you, except for that Occidental mythology, to be quite honest. And then from there, we can break it open depending on the areas of interest. But to have a look at the threads of what's happened as a result, particularly of the advent of Christianity, I think is very, very important, because the Abrahamic religions are from the Middle East. Connections with, for example, certain aspects of Judaism did begin with a thunder god around Mount Sinai, and hadn't been elsewhere. And of course, there's so many different areas that we could explore, but they all lead into the brain manipulation, or the consciousness manipulation that we are going through today. That is it's a very mixed bag. Yes. And it's a very mixed bag of misappropriation, because many of us are still within a colonialist trap. So until we can really be, I think savage is a good word for this, until we can be savage enough to reflect on how we are misappropriating so many people's different forms of spirituality, like particularly things like the chakras. That's not a Western word. That is very much from a different culture, and to study that culture and the spirituality associated with that culture is fabulous. This is anthropology. Bring it on. Let's put a book together that allows us to explore many different cultures and different cultures' spiritualities and ideas and understandings. Let's put a book together of that and understand the language and how that language has been stolen. Even you know that. Many of you know that. And it is time for us to reclaim. Now, because we're in an era, talking of Y-node theory, because we're in an era where genealogy can allow us to follow the threads of ancestry, that it's huge. It's for personally, as a trafficked person, I was trafficked at birth, and I've just got my freedom last year in the New South Wales Supreme Court. But therefore, it was not until after the year 2000 that I managed to find who my mother was, who's now dead. So I'll say was, as if whatever. But then I received her name and birth certificate, and I received her parents' name and birth certificate. And I'm in the very lucky, cool situation of remaining friends with one of the best genealogists in the world for the last 42 years, who said, gimme. So I gave them the paperwork, and they started to research my ancestors on my mother's line. Everybody sort of knows this story by now. I think it's pretty well understood that for 40 odd years, I'd been studying the period of time around the invasions of Britain, when it was called, the people were called Brittany, the same as Breton, Brittany in France. These are all tribal affiliations which are very, very closely aligned. And for many, many years, of course, for decades, hundreds of years, because of their Bronze Age and their trade routes, everybody was getting backwards and forwards. And it was pretty much like today, if I sit down with one of you and have a cup of coffee and you're from a different country, and we can discuss ancestors, we can discuss the way life is in a particular area. Like in India, for example, there's a different caste system, and it's to be able to explore that and understand how that perhaps came into effect, why people like Quetzalcoatl was considered a red-haired man despite being a serpent bird. There's really interesting curios that are worth looking at, even in the Tassili Desert. There are and the Tassili is known to be one of the most arid places that we know of on Earth. And there's one area where there are cave paintings, and there's one vastly, I think it's 30 odd foot high wall where someone has painted the image of a woman astride two lions with a bow in one hand, and she's sort of shooting. And again, she's pale skinned and red haired. So have we moved amongst each other and known each other for quantum numbers of generation upon generation? Yes, we have. And we're not taught that. We're taught almost to think in corridors of this person came from here. Even the historic application of the idea of Celts. The textbooks say we all came from Austria, we just spread out everywhere. And that in itself is a terra nullius ideology that says there was nobody in Ireland, there was nobody in Britain, that it's saying almost there was nobody in India before the British invaded. There was nobody in South America before the British invaded. There was nobody in Brazil before the Portuguese invaded. this kind of mentality, this segmentation mentality that has gone into the history books is associated with the colonialist idea again. So we're just going to bust it. And we've got to bust it by understanding the relativity of history. So history in the whole or majority, we're not talking anthropology here, we're actually talking history that's recorded. What's recorded is the conquerage of every people by a usurper hegemony that's gone into a place and raped that environment for both human and animal and human and plant and mineral resources. That's the reason. Everything is economic. Okay, so understanding that means, can I please know about the people that were conquered? Can I please explore what they know? Can I please sit with you over coffee and explore your understanding of Bolivia, of Iceland, of Rajasthan? Can I please come? Can we talk about it? Can you tell me something I don't already know? Who knows what's really worth the conversation, until such time as we drop the idea of being a colonialist people and ask people of indigenous cultures what their ancestry is. So consequently, to backtrack, yes, Bernard went through and found 2,000 years worth of ancestors. As long as people have been paying taxes, their names have been recorded, whether that's through the parish records, the titles, the rolls, wills, census, everybody who was anybody was recorded. And it turned out that the people that I was related to were the people that I've been studying for 40 years. Now, that wasn't really important for me, but I was able to write a story written in the first person and the present tense about my ancestors. And I wanted to write that little book, Brittany, for my children who had no other relatives except me. But it went viral. And then I was able to, at workshops, connect up with people of the Byron Spirit Festival. Thanks, Kate, wherever you are. The Byron Spirit Festival. At the Indigenous Elders table, I sat with 3 First Nation people from Australia, a Māori man and another man from Hawaii. And we were able to discuss the reclamation of our own ancestral knowledge in the present time. Now, the first thing I said at that particular workshop was, I'm an Indigenous elder, and you're all going to think I'm a fraud. And the reason I said that was because most people who are pale Anglo-European have stolen somebody else's spirituality and are sitting there proclaiming it as their own, and it's not. In difference to raising up my ancestral heritage with the crowd, what I wanted to do was to bring up the Cronulla riots, because the Cronulla riots were based on all of these Anglo-European boys and girls draped in a flag that's got the butcher's apron on it, by the way, and anybody who's got an Irish heritage will know what I mean by the butcher's apron. And if you don't know what it is, please look it up. And there's a whole story associated with that. They've draped this butcher's apron with a few stars on it around their shoulders, and they're claiming, get out of our country, to anybody of Middle Eastern association, not understanding for one second that we don't belong on this landscape. We have not asked permission, and sovereignty was never ceded. And as long as sovereignty is not ceded, we are a people who are living in somebody else's territory. It's exactly the same as if a group of people walk into the backyard here and set up their camp and say, we're living here. I go, get out of my fucking yard. And they're going to go, it's not yours, it's ours now. How about that? What about that is misunderstood? And even my own offspring will say to me, I was born here, that makes me Indigenous. I said, get the fuck out of here. Wake up. Then once you've got that understanding, it's choice. Because what I understood about the Cronulla riots is that nobody sat down to have a conversation. And what I was really aware of was, I was traveling to England in the 1970s with my 7-year-old son beside me in the airplane. We were stopped in Beirut airport to refuel the plane. and the soldiers came on the plane. And so I had a rifle in my face. The young man was probably about 22, the soldier, 24 maybe. And the plane was filled with soldiers, and they were armed and they were ready to shoot. And that's because there was a war in Lebanon and it was brutal. So my son said to me, "Are we okay, mummy?" And I looked at the young guy with the rifle trained on my face and I said, "Are we okay?" And he went, "Yep." I got it. I understood. They had their work to do, but there was nothing cruel about what they were doing. This was their job as soldiers to do this. So consequently, the parents of the people in the Cronulla riots, their parents had escaped a war-torn environment. Now, unless one is First Nation on the soil of Australia, we don't know about war. We don't. It's not here. We haven't known. We haven't had our cities bombed and blasted. We haven't had legs blown off and arms blown off. We haven't had the terror of not knowing where our children were because they went off this morning to go to school and they haven't come home again. In Lebanon, that's what the terror is. In Kabul, it's the same. In many, many countries, it's the same. So what happened is that the refugees have come to this landscape. Their children are born here. Their children are not accepted because they have their skin is not the same color as mine, as if like I can't lift up my skin and show all the blood. And they are denied. This has happened in this particular country since I was a child, when the white Australia policy was rampant. And in that period of time, of course, in come the immigrants from Greece and Italy, and they were spat on. They were called garlic heads and you name it. They were called wogs and dagos. That was the terminology of the day for people from Greece and Italy. And they were the people who built the Harbour Bridge and the Warragamba Dam. And slowly people from different Indigenous backgrounds could come into Australia, depending on the colour of their skin. Go tell me what the fuck that's about. I can't believe it. And I can't believe it that riot took place because of the fact of Middle Eastern looks. A friend of mine in Byron Bay had to fly to Sydney because his sister couldn't leave her apartment. They're Egyptian. His sister couldn't leave their apartment because of the terror of that week. It kept on going for ages. And nobody sat down and asked the kids for their story. And this is why stories are so important. This is why research is super important, is not to make assumptions that somebody's better than somebody else or somebody's less than somebody else, or getting marriage the right thing to do if you want to have children, or being involved in a relationship that's a monogamous relationship is the only way to go. All of these thought processes need to go out the window, get thrown away completely. Then we have the opportunity of reaching across the table and understanding. Now, other things come about with tarot and understanding, and that'll include bodily sensations. And I'll just give you one little example before we get on to numerology. I have a very, I think intense is a good word actually, because of the struggle that's happening in this country, Australia, with China. Now, I have so many clients from Beijing and from Shanghai. That clientele began with the student influx, all the kids who were coming here to study at the university in Australia, because Australia's big business, that was their PR scheme, is let's get the kids in from China, while at the same time we're going to make China out to be the bad dude. Go figure. I mean, Bruce Lee, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit old for thinking that a country is in itself a problem, when it may very well have to do with the chess game of the hegemonies, or the chess game of the ideologies. So that I had one young man for a reading, and I remember retrospectively, because his mother caught a plane out from Beijing to get a reading with me, and also to visit her son who was in hospital. And he'd come for a reading, and in the middle of the reading, I doubled over. I felt the exact sensations of having barbed wire go through my hips and through my lower belly. And I was, ow. And he was saying, "You're okay, you're okay." I said, "Hang on a second, hang on." Got myself together. laughed and explained what it felt like. He said, it just felt like I just fell into a pile of barbed wire and it penetrated my gut. His mother came out from Beijing because he'd been in a motorcycle accident and he'd smashed his pelvis. That's what that was about. So when she turned up at the hospital, he's sort of sitting there like this. And she said, aren't you bothered about how this? He says, no, I was in my reading. So, and the person who did the reading didn't say I was going to die. They just had the smashed sensation go through their pelvis. And he was actually that relaxed about it. So that even though a phenomenon had occurred in their reading that could have seemed close to being deadly, this person was not traumatized. And of course, sitting there opposite their mother, looking at this beautiful woman, she's probably in her 40s. This is a professional woman, but I'm looking at this woman and all I could see looking at this person's face was the golden eagle hunters in Mongolia. She was that beautiful. And there's a young woman who is accepted as being the first woman in Mongolia to be one of the eagle hunters. And the eagle hunters in Mongolia, the eagles hunt the foxes, and the foxes are skun, and the soft fur is for the children's mittens, and the rest of the meat goes to the dogs. And everything works out very, very well that way. But she's from despite the Chinese Revolution, understanding that the Chinese Revolution has been a revolution that's got really nothing to do with the people. Yes, a lot of the people who were academics were wiped out. So what happened in Australia? How is that not the same? Because elders of different Indigenous heritage they are academics because they have vast memory systems, vast kinship systems. The people even in Australia, First Nation, every bird, every plant, every rock formation, just these are all known. These are memorized, you understand? So we can't tell the difference. I can't tell the difference between a person who's studied and done a PhD in an academic institution associated with the so-called Free West and a person of Indigenous heritage who's remembering 70,000 years worth of information. Do you understand? So that's where we're up to. You can play semantics with this workshop to your heart's content. It's not going to make you a good reader. It's not going to be, this Advanced Tarot Collective is about being knowledge holders, getting as much as we can from this vast amount of information that is cumulative in tarot. And believe me, some people have said to me, oh, did you just read tarot? Do I what? How many people do you know who can prophesy the future 2, 3, 5, 10 years, 20 years ahead? So don't allow anybody to patronize anyone. Each of you here has a unique capacity to have vast amounts of knowledge. And the more knowledge you've got, and I'm not talking in this, yes, some of it's information, but check the information, make certain that it's got deep roots. Because we're inundated with internet information at the moment, and people are just taking trivial bits and pieces, cobbling them together, forming them in, how can I make a PR story out of this and get clients? And I could name names, I'm not going to, but you all know probably who I'm talking about, who have got huge, big PR happening on their websites to do with them selling little bags worth of spells. Where's my sick bag? Okay, so what you do with the possibility that we're heading into an odd period of history, which is not all that odd because it has happened if you go back the last 5,000 years, when we're just repeating information. And the more you know, the more you can see how things just repeat themselves. And that includes the invasion of certain countries by certain people. It just goes nonstop. But to explore your own heritage, to be able to then realize that you are many people, you're made up of many different ancestral and Indigenous groups. The more you can learn about each particular group of people and the stories they've got to tell and the wisdom that they hold within their flesh and blood bodies that they express through chewing walrus hide, for example, the happier we're going to be. I would love to sit with a group of people who can, the people of the Sami in Norway, for example. Here's my momentary dream or vision would be to go and sit amongst the reindeer herders and understand how to make the gur. A gur is like a yurt. To be able to understand how they pack up in a day and move, how they work with the reindeer, how they can understand by looking in the eyes of the reindeer what the weather's going to be. Now, I don't have that because we become reliant on books, we become reliant on blah, blah. Instead of going so deeply into a subject that we research the fuck out of it. And if we come out with one thread, and that thread has the possibility of being stitched into some other garment that may be of significance in 10,000 years from now, let's do it. Okay, so, and as I said, one of the main reasons I'm doing this, because I get the nerves like crazy before I come on here with you people. I'm just used to sitting in a room with one person at a time, hiding out. I hide out well. But what I want to do is that if there is a drama, not only for you, but let's just say you have, can we please think all the way through this course unto the 7th generation? If you can just write that down and have that almost like a vision of how you want to work this. Because I have taught my offspring these techniques. My offspring do know how to do this. And my daughter particularly is really good at hurting people. She doesn't mean to, and she doesn't do it by touching them, but she does it just the same. She's been doing it since she was 2 years of age. How does she do that? Perhaps it was my great grandmother who had the skill. And if it's woven down through the bloodlines and the Y nodes to who I am, and I can give it to you, and you can teach it to your own offspring or your nephews and nieces if you choose not to have offspring, or you don't want to, or you can't, and you can put it onto other people, then you've given them an income. Because the one thing I'm very certain of, and it was above the temples of Delphi, it said, know thyself. And if we start with the honesty of the individuality of self, and then we spread out and we start to really listen, which is why I put up the video on John Young this week. Anybody get a chance to see that? Thank you. The video on John Young is about deep listening. And deep listening is something very rare because most people are ready for what they want to say next. And John Young expresses this incredibly through his dealings with the Kalahari. And I can also remember when my son who's now 49, came to me at the age of 18 when I was crapping on about my car and needing a good mechanic for my car. And he'd said, I can do it, mother. And I'd crapped on about my car a little bit more. And he'd said, I can do it, mother. And I'd crapped on a little bit more. And he put his hands on either side of my cheeks. And he said, you don't listen. What wisdom. So I said, can you fix it? I'll pay you. And he said, yes. And he fixed it and I paid him. Massive life lesson from my own offspring that said, learn, even though I talk a lot when I'm here, most of the time I spend most of my day in silence thinking. Okay, so back to the subject. What I want to give you is the next phase before we get on to tarot, whereby you can make a living. Okay, because what I'm doing is doing an income. That's this. This is called numerology. And when we looked earlier at the tree of life, kabbalah, we realized that there were 10 sephira, yes, 10 little circles, and there was a speculative 11th, yes, yes, and that there were, if you added the 10 circles with the 22 paths, you've got 32 paths. And if you added the arc, which is associated with Pluto, you've got your 33rd, yes? So you've got 11, 22, and 33. So you've got 10 sephira with the possibility of an 11th. You've got 22 22 paths, and you've got which is straightforward, and then you've got 32 paths plus an extra one, which is the speculative art, which makes you 33rd. So these last three numbers, 11, 22, and 33, are called master numbers, but don't get your neck a knot over that. That doesn't mean shit. Because if these numbers don't fulfill themselves, they can end up basically the disillusionment of the heroin addict is down here. It can destroy a lot of people. So what you're going to do is, here's your first chart. Can you please copy that?
Law, that's mirrored. It's
Okay,
it's
sure. There's a mirror thing I can do here, I think, on,
yeah.
where am I? Whereabouts is it? View. Is it view? No. Where can I mirror it?
That's the right way on my one. Oh no, it's not. Never mind.
Oh, hang on. There it is. It's a doodad on the phone. How's that?
There
I'll just drink my cup of tea while you draw this. Just if you can give Ari a note, when just put a heads up in some way when you've got it all written down.
Law, can you bring it closer to the screen? Like bring it right up. Thank you.
How's that?
That's great.
Is that clear? I didn't want to sort of like put it in chat boxes and shit like that. So I'll just hold it there. Oops. I'm trying to get it straight. There you go. How about that? Oh, shit. You can always ask me as well. So on your top line, you're going to put the numbers 1 to 9, 1 through 9.
why has it not got K and
Why it hasn't got K and V, I'll get to.
What's underneath the 33?
Underneath 33 is just a little squiggly line that leads to a circle with a 1 around it. This is actually my notes to myself saying this is page 1. Good question. Thank you. Now, I learned this system, I was 22, and a woman came out to Australia from America, and their name was Jackie Robertson Swan. Oops. And Jackie Robertson Swan, who taught me this, maintained, and I don't know this to be true or not, maintained that this is what they called the Pythagorean system of numerology. Bearing in mind, of course, that this number system comes from Aramaic. And sourcing the way of our numerology, our numbers and our letters is really interesting as well, to see where we've stolen and misappropriated our system. Shell, you're looking like you mind. You right, Shell?
Can you tell us the name of that again? The Pythagorean.
It's called a Pythagorean system of numerology.
Thank you.
Bear in mind, that's what I was told.
Laura, I was just trying to see the far right margin, what you've got down the right-hand side of the page.
The far right-hand side of the page, you'll see 11 has got a K under it.
Yeah. Okay.
22 has got a V under it. And 33 has got nothing under it, except
Okay.
my little squiggly 1.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, why Jackie Robertson Swan picked the K and picked the V out and put them with the master numbers, I have no idea. But it's weirdly enough, the fact that I've stuck with this for fucking 50 years is because it works. That's all. That's the only reason. So any theories to do with origins, it's the same with people who will tell you that tarot cards came from here, came from there. They're all just making shit up. The church didn't write about numerology. The church didn't write about kabbalah, and the church didn't write about tarot. So the idea of anybody giving you the facts of the origins of things just kind of does my head in a little bit. Yes, good idea to keep that in mind. That healthy cynicism or skepticism towards somebody's claims of righteousness. If you can check it up and you can't find anything, then it may be that there's nothing valid about that, but it also may be that the facts, the books might have disappeared in the 90s. So, got that? Okay. Now I'm going to give you, I'm going to teach, before we get on to describing what's going to happen, I'm going to tell you how to work this. So I've written it down somewhere for somebody else. This is so difficult to do, and I do apologize. It's sort of not at the same time. All my pieces of paper. So I've written the person's name down here. But you're not. You're going to write your own name, and you're going to write it in capital letters on one line, please. I'm going to talk you through this.
Birth name or chosen name?
No, it has to be the name that you were born by. And on this particular system, thank you very much for asking that. It's very important. The names that you become known by are like a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. Okay,
So
they add a little bit of flavor, but they are not the name that's on your original birth certificate.
in full, all names.
Full name, every single bit of it. Your first name, if you've got middle names, that if your name is from a different landscape and a different culture, please write that as per your birth certificate in capital letters across the line. You need plenty of room.
So I have altered my birth certificate.
I can't see you. I've got a moth.
Yep. There we go.
Back. Okay, gotcha. Hi,
Yeah. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So I've altered mine. I've paid to alter my birth certificate.
Your original birth certificate before that is what you're after. The very, very original one, no matter what you've altered. You're talking to someone in here who's sold. I finally got my birth certificate, my original birth certificate last December.
Was it interesting, your name?
It is what it is now.
Oh, there we go.
Both my mother and father are now on there, and they weren't on the so-called original birth certificate, which was a lie because it was by the people that bought me. So this case is a little bit different, wonky to what you're doing, but the name you're known by on your original birth certificate, you take no marriages into account, no name changes into account. We're not going to be looking at them, just in case you don't want me to see. I know you can all fucking stop laughing.
Thank you.
There you go. All right. All right. Have you written them down?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to start with wherever you've got, okay. Wherever you've got an A, underneath, put a line, please, underneath the first name, middle name, and last name. Put a line above each name. 3 or 4 or whatever, 2, 3 or 4, however many names you've got. Beneath the main line that you've got underneath your name, put 3 little extra lines, 3 or 4 extra lines, depending on the number of names. So if your name was Janet, Felspar, Mary, Miriam, Anderson, that would be 4 names. You've got 4 lines under it. If you've got 3 names, you've got 3 lines under it. You've got the main line underneath it, then you've got 3 lines under that. Then you've got another 3 lines under that under that bottom lot. I'll just, where's my pen? There's my little Sharpie. I'll show you. Finding an untainted, unbastardized piece of paper in this house is hilarious. Okay, so the person that I'm going to be playing with that show you later I've underlined that, and then I'll put 2 lines above and I'll put 2 lines below. So I've taken this person's name, who's only got 2 names. He's only got a first name and a last name. This person's name is Julian Lee. So what I'm going to do underneath, I'm going to go through each one. So wherever you've got an A, you put 1 on this line. So for example, this person's got an A, I put 1. I'm just going to show you with this person's full name, and then you can do it all for yourself. 1, V is 3, 3, 9, 1, 5, 3, 5, 5. So that's what I've done for this person. You see what I've done? I've taken their whole name and put the letters, the numbers associated with each letter underneath their name. Yeah. Anybody wants to lift it up and show me? If there's a K, what do we put? If you've got a K, thanks, Kate. If you've got a K, you put your 11 as a little 11 and put a dot underneath it to make sure you know it in difference to being 2 1s. You cool? If you've got a V, do the same thing. Put a little V, just put V underneath that, put 22, and just put a line on either side of it or circle it or something. If you've got a K, just put 11 and just circle it or something so you know that it's still there as an 11 or a 22 because you're not going to break them down. For an I is 9. It's on your chart. Anybody who wants to know any of the numbers, just call out because yeah, I got them in my head. I did make a small fortune from doing numerology in my 20s, by the way, so that for each of you, there is an income in this. If it got to the stage where you need to go to the markets and put yourself out as numerologists, you got it today. You'll be doing it from now on. So A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4, E is 5, F is 6, G is 7, H is 8. Hey, lucky people, if you've got an 8. I is 9. J is 1. Is 1. K is 20. K is 11, which would break down to a 2. When we come to that, there can be breakdowns, but we'll talk about how these master numbers break down when we get to it. L is 3. All of us 3 people talk a lot. M is 4. You need one of them. You need one of those boxes. Give it a stand on, support yourself. N is 5. O is 6. P is 7. Q is 8. R is 9. S is 1. T is 2. U is 3. You get it? V is 22. W is 5. X is 6. Y is 7. Z is 8. Anybody still writing? More
Can I
questions?
just check with you?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Just with a V, you said you do like a little tiny 22 and
Just
a
a
dot
little tiny
beside.
22 because you're going to add that 22 to the rest of them, but just put a line on either side or circle it so that you know that it's not 2 separate 2s. Yes. And when you've done that, at the end of that particular line, you're going to put an equals sign. It's worth being sloppy a little bit to start out with, because we get neat. You'll get neater as you get into each one, and you could always, of course, end up making up your own templates for this chart for when you're working with clients, so that you don't have to think too much. And also, after a period of time, of course, the numerics of each letter will become second nature to you as well. So once you've done your full name, you're going to add them up. So in this instance, I've got 1 and 3 is 4, another 3 is 7, 9 is 16, 1 is 17, and 5 is 22. 10 there is 32, 35, that puts 35, 8.
So that's
Everything's going to be broken down.
all together first.
All together, you add them all together. Now, what you also want to do, this person's first name, Julian, is 1 and 3 is 4, and 3 is 7. Yes, and 9 is 16, and 1 is 17, and 5 makes that 22. So this person, the addition of this first person's first name is 22. See? And the addition of their second name is, and please, you need the full numbers. You need the full numbers so that if your name adds up to 76, you need to put that 76 first and then a slash. So each one is going to get broken down. So 76 would be 13/4. Any questions to stop me?
What if it adds up to 11? Keep
If it adds up to 11, leave the 11. If it's added up to another number that breaks down to the 11, still leave it at the 11 and put in brackets beside that 11, in brackets, put 2.
Okay.
Okay, because that's just a little bit important to this. All right.
What about if you have 11s in your name? Like,
They're the ones where you circle them a little, make them little and
Yep,
circle them.
circle
Same
them.
as if you've got a K or you've got a V, you just
do I
got-
add the 11s? Do I start say, so Kiki,
don't-
so K?
don't
11
break the
plus
11
11?
down.
So for the full number, do I add them as 11s?
If your full name, if the letters of your full name comes to 11,
No, I meant for Kiki, I've got 11, 5, 11. Is that
that's exactly correct.
so? And then
Then you add up the 11 and the 11 and the 5 and and
Got it.
5 and put there 22, 30, that will be 32, which will /5.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So 72, I'm 9.
7 and 2 is 9, yes.
Laura, would you please clarify for each name? For example, if my first name is 40 and second name is 51 and third is something else, do I add?
It's 91 and your third one, you add or on top of it, you add them all together.
Yeah,
So can
okay.
you hold your paperwork up and show me and reverse it? Or if not, just give me the numbers of the first name.
40.
40, that's 40/4.
Yeah. And then 51.
That's 51/6.
Yes. And last is 27. So that's
7 is 2
9.
and 7/9. And then
Right.
you'll add up all the main numbers and then all the minor numbers so that you get a prime number and you get a base number. The prime
Okay.
number will be the addition of all the big numbers, and
Mhm.
the base number is where the smallest one possible from there.
Thank
And
you.
then you make sure that they're even.
Okay.
So if it comes to 127, you want to know that it comes to a 1. If it comes to a 4, you know you've done your math wrong.
So Laura, if you have 46, you get 10 and then
1.
/1. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Got it.
So all those numbers matter.
All
as
of the
well.
numbers matter.
So, okay.
Laura,
Yes. Helen.
hi. Can you please repeat? I have, let's say my name is 12. Then how do you do like
But you
the?
write the 12.
Yeah,
Is your first name?
yeah.
First name adds to 12/3. So 2 and 1 equals 3. So you're breaking it down.
Okay, got it.
Yep,
yeah.
beautiful. Excellent. Good. No, great question. Keep them
Thank you.
coming.
So the slashed numbers that come afterwards, if those are added up, it should equal the one for the whole calculation?
Yes, your prime number is the majority of all the numbers, and your base number is the one that's left over at the end of them. I'll just show you. See,
Right, and that's like a little
he's-
checksum, yeah.
cool.
Got you.
He's 35, and then I've forward slashed that to 8 because 3 and 5 is 8.
Yep.
Yes. So with your name, you just add all these numbers. This is just the first bit. We've got fuck tons to do today. Oh, love a good challenge.
I'm lost.
Hi, darling.
Hi. So for Kristen, the first number is 46.
Yeah, 4 and 6 is 10.
Yeah.
So 46 /10 /1.
Right. Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as your brain equilibrates, you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it'd be the same for each of the names you're known by 1, 2, or even 3. I mean, there's a person at the moment, their name is Lord, a singer named Lord,
Yes.
Lord, but that's not their birth name. That's the name they're known by. So that known by will have a little twist on the top of this, like a salt and pepper on the top of a meal, but it isn't the foundation of who they are.
Right.
So this is prior to any marriage, any name changes or anything.
Mhm.
Yes.
So my second name, I got 29.
49.
29.
29.
that's
That's an 11. That's an
then-
11. 2 plus, so 29 /11, and then in brackets beside that, put a 2.
Right.
Because that 2 is a background sound.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Sort of think of this as a little bit orchestral. You'd be excellent on the right page.
And so this system seems to be a lot different than other numerology systems.
I don't know other numerology systems. All I know is that I've done
Yes.
this one for the last 40 odd years, and it's worked 100% of the time. So to go into other systems, why would I fucking want to do that?
No, I've just always looked at other systems, so not this
but
one.
That'll
So
confuse you. Once you've
yeah,
got the one and
that's
it
okay.
works, and
Yeah.
all I can say to you is I can promise you that this works. Yep. And then when you use it in the next week or so, you're going to do 1,000 people.
Okay.
And if you can do 1,000 people, or you can do 10 people, you can do 20 people, and you can prove this to yourself over and over by explaining to them who they are and what's happening for them by way of this technique, then you will know for yourself. And if you say, cross my palm with silver to every one of those 1,000 people, you're going to do well by the end of next week. The hat's going to be chink-a-chink. All right, done this. Everybody's up to this stage. Right, now we get fun. Oh,
sorry, one more question. For Kristen's situation where it's the 11, so would you just use
what was that?
11?
Could you
Sorry.
repeat that
Sorry.
from the beginning? For what?
So Kristen, she just asked about her name and her last name equals an 11. And you said to keep the 2 on the side.
In a bracket.
In the bracket. Do you use the 11? And what happens with the 2?
It's sitting there ephemerally. We'll get around to that. You're
Okay,
getting ahead of
okay.
yourself. Can we just keep, thanks
Okay.
for asking, keep a memory of that, write that down.
Yeah.
That you want to know about that. And if
Okay.
I get too carried away with something else, get sidetracked, Lee, bring me back.
Thank you. I will.
Your interaction, I have mentioned, I did get a bit frustrated and I was talking to Ari about it this week. The difficulty that we're not in a class together is that I want you to interrupt me. I want you to interrupt me.
Okay.
Okay. I want you to constantly come back. This is not like a school where you got to sit in the background, put your fucking
Hey,
hand.
Law.
Yes.
Just kidding.
I would call you a cunt, but they wouldn't put that up on YouTube, would they?
No, don't call me that this week.
All right, so everybody up to date with this? Then, so you've got your equals at the end. Yes? So what you're going to do then, the top line is all about your vowels. So you're going to number your vowels only on the top line. I shall play as well.
This may be a stupid question, but I'm just going to check. Do you consider a Y as a vowel or no?
Vowel, what, please, can you say that to everybody in the fucking room?
This may be a stupid question, but
No,
I'm
that is
wanting
a-
to know
a Y is
whether a
considered a
Y is
vowel.
considered as a vowel.
Thank you very much for reminding me, because I'd forgotten to add that in there. Y is considered in most languages to be like a yud. Y, U, J, even W are interconnected. So the Y is considered to be a vowel. Yes, definitely.
And the W as well?
No, a W is not a vowel, just the Y.
Are you saying
Why-
J? Yes.
Over here in the US.
I was only
sometimes
mentioning the fact
YW.
that in many different languages, these letters are considered to be something different. But the Y in the Anglo-European language is considered to be a vowel. So that if you were having the word only, you'd have a 6 and a 5 and a 3 and a 7, and that 7 would be a vowel, it would be on your top line.
You know, that is because of the sound that the Y makes when you say it through your mouth, is it because it's like an E,
Yeah.
where your mouth is not closed in together, that it's open. That's what designates a vowel.
Yeah.
Right.
Vowel. Yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Done all that? Added them up? Got an equal sign? Thank you. Bottom line, underneath all this lot, get into all your consonants. So there's my friend Julian Lee. I've done them. And add them up, please.
Yep. Thank you. It was too high. Couldn't see it.
Okay, how's that? Thank you. So in your first name with K-E-K-E, you've got 10/1. And then with your consonants, you've got 22, you've got 11 and 11.
Actually, that's not my full name. So
That's why I'm just giving you an example.
yeah.
So that's what you would have in that particular instance as for your consonants. You just take all of them. Everybody with me?
Do we need to separate the first name and last name and calculating consonants and vowels, or just take the whole name?
The whole thing.
Okay.
Your whole name. If you've got 10 middle names, use them all. The more names you've got, the better you are. The healthier. Okay. I'll explain that as we get further through.
I'd really like to make sure that you come back to that, because I've been very adamant about giving my children a ridiculous amount of names.
I know
and
you
so
have. Yes, it's great. Excellent. Yes.
I would.
I
I'd like to know
attempted to
more.
do the same thing for 2 of my offspring,
Uh-huh.
to make certain they had H's in their names.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll explain that as we get further in. We all up to date? A lot of people looking down.
So Lo, you want the total for our full name? You want the total for the constants, and you want the total for the vowels, is it?
Yes.
Just doing some
Now-
calculations.
Yes, because where am I up to? Okay. That piece of paper can go. So what we're going to end up with is something like this. So your inner self are the vowels. Your integrated self are all the letters. Your attractant, which is sometimes called the outer self, are all the consonants. So you just need to keep a note of that so that you're
Can
nice
you
and
hold that really close to the screen, please? Inner self.
Inner self are your vowels. The integrated self are all the letters. The attractant or outer self are all the consonants. If you can possibly make up a little chart that's a bit like this one I've got in front of you. Oops. You're going to also need a thing called an inclusion table.
What's next to the fives in the inclusion table? In
The
brackets?
inclusion table, you can see I've got 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, in brackets -2, 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s. Yes? We're not including the 11s and 22s in here. They don't matter to the inclusion table.
Oh, mama.
So with where we have 11, should we include it in the
When you've
twos
got an
or-
11 and you're doing this section here, to include, oh, it's all back to front. Excuse me. I'll get my brain around it. It's synapses problems here. When you've got an 11, you're going to add them as a 2.
Okay.
And if you've got V's, so which is 22, you're going to add them as a 4. You're going to include them as a 4. So that whenever you've got 5s, so because N's are 5s, E's are 5s, etc., you're going to, however many you've got, you're going to deduce them by 2, because we always have an overabundance of 5s. And so the great leveler is to reduce them by 2.
The exponents you have up there by the numbers, are those all 3s?
Pardon?
You have small.
They're
Okay.
S's.
Those are S's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Laura, what if there's only 1 5, then
you put it down as 1 5. Just at this stage in time, just put a number of each one that you've got. You know, there's a reason why I'm using this odd person's name also, which is Julian Lee, which I'll get back to.
When we're counting these up, are they? Is it
I
in-
can't see
are they
you.
like-
I have an image of a demonic person with red hair and a very intensely tickle chopper there that we use for circumcisions of boys if we need to. Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Letitia.
That's my pixie. It's a bit scary.
Okay. What was the question?
Question is, when we're putting these in the inclusion table, we count all of the numbers above and below.
You're taking from the inclusion table, you want to take the numbers, the whole thing, your integrated self.
Right.
So your integrated self are all the numbers of your name, yes?
Yes.
That's what you include in the inclusion table down that little up there. It's all those numbers of self.
Okay, cool.
From that main line. Letitia,
Yep.
you see that main line there?
Yep.
That's the one. So the inclusion table numbers. So for example, that person, so you'd be, if your name was Letitia at birth, you'd be including every number of your first name, middle name, and last name in the inclusion table.
Okay.
So how many 1s have you got? How many 2s have you got? How many? If you got 0, put 0.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, if you got 1, I'll put 1. If you got 10, put 10.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent.
Laura, what are the words listed next to the inclusion table? It says
This one here?
Yes.
Okay, the
one.
first one is called, the first one in the word in there is ruling tendency. Yeah. Next word down is the key, K-E-Y. Yeah. Next word down is weaknesses. Next word is foundation. The challenges are divided into 3 sections: main, mid, and minor. And the bit of the bottom is called the rock in the road.
Laura, next to the numbers, is that like, are those like little 3s that, or?
No, the little S's, like
the little S's.
1s, 2s, 3s. How many 1s have you got? How many 2s have you got?
Okay.
So it'd end up looking like, so I'd have, for example, 10 ones. As an example. 0 2s, 1 3, 1 4, 0 5s, like that. Yeah.
And on the 5, if I have 4, I subtract 2 and come up with the 2,
Comes to
then,
2.
correct?
Yep. Thank you. Yep.
If
So if I
I
have
only,
5.
oh, sorry. If I only have 3, sorry. If I only have 3 5s, would you just leave it as
So you
that?
take it away. Don't cheat. It means you got
That-
1 5. Take away the
That was
2.
my question. That was also my question because I have 2 5s, so I've subtracted down to 0.
That's it. Yes. Thank you.
I'm so lost right now.
So if I have
Far
1 5, I should put it as 0.
If you've got 1 5, you put it as 0.
Okay, thanks.
But is
So
your,
what do I
is,
put if
I'm
I've
looking
got
at your
3?
name. To go back to Anisha. Anisha, is your name Anisha on your birth certificate?
No.
Okay, I was going to say, because you've got a lot of 5 sitting there in that name.
No, but that's just the salt.
That's where you probably compensated by taking on the name of Anisha, because it's got the 5s in it, and you wanted, without even knowing, your flesh and blood body knows that you need those extra 5s in there. So that you've gone ahead and done that. That's really exciting when we do things like that without even knowing, and then we find out later. Okay. From Kate Little, is this ruling only in the 5? Yeah, this is only working with the 5, because 5 is just so many. Yes.
Well, and what happened with the 11? If you've got a little 11?
11, you write it down as a 2, please.
2.
In this particular inclusion table.
And so if you have a 22, do you put it as 2 2s?
4. Put it in a 4. Hey,
Hang
Jason,
on,
I
who
can't
were
see you. I only got your image, darling. Jason, do you want me to come in on you? No, gone? Can't hit.
So were you replying to me when you said about the 22?
What was that? Please repeat that.
Were you replying to me when you said about the 22 that I put it as a 4?
I'll reply to anybody.
I'm trying to work out whether that information was for me or for somebody else.
Doesn't matter. Whoever's got a 22 in their name, when you're doing your inclusion table, that'll be written up as a 4.
Okay.
If you have 7 5s, what do you do?
You've got 5 5s. Just subtract 2.
So I'm just a bit stuck on the inclusion table. So I, next to the 1 to 9, I put in how many ones I have.
Yeah, you put in how many number of 1s you've got in your full name.
Yes.
How many 2s you got in your full name? You've got none.
Yeah.
Put none, 0, or put a 0 symbol, because nothing. That's another conversation. Number of 3s, put them in there. Just put them in there so we know. And then as soon as we've got that happening, I can explain where we go to next.
Okay, because I'm totally lost about the 5s thing. Like what?
Okay, how many 5s in your name?
3.
3. Take away 2. You've got 1.
But why?
Because this is the technique that I was given. And because there's so many 5s, like your N's and your E's, like your S's can be overwhelming. And when I was taught this, Jackie Robertson Swan said that you just take away the number 5, just through all their experience of 20 odd years of working with this particular system, they've gone, everybody's going to have an abundance of 5s otherwise, in the majority of cases.
So you always just write 1 5, no matter how many 5s are there.
No, not at all. If you've got 7 5s, you write 5 5s. So just subtract 2 5s of them. Just subtract 2. So that if you've got 7 5s, if you've got 7 5s, take away 2. This is odd.
So the rule of 5 is what?
In the inclusion table only, always subtract 2 from the number of 5s that you've got. This is all under the umbrella of tarot, by the way, and Kabbalah. So we're not deviating into some other system. These are all connected along with astrology and astronomy and planetary associations. It's all going to work in, but you'll see that by week 4. We're in week 4. Okay, where am I?
Okay, what? Just using.
1 second, Luna. Huh?
Right.
So just them.
Easy.
Ask them. Yes. Yes, Luna.
Okay, so I have 5 5s. So I just subtract 2 equaling 3, or do I
Yes.
go?
That's
subtract-
it. You've got 3 5s then. Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Law, in
another-
terms of sorry, in terms of the numbers that go next to inner self, integrated self, etc.
Leave them alone for the moment, if you wouldn't mind,
cool.
Danger. Just
Yep,
stick
yep.
with the integrated self. Just stick with that main line, or what's called the integrated self for these techniques. We'll get around to what the other ones mean when we're interpreting. Right now, we're just getting all the numbers in line, all your ducks in a row, so to speak.
Sounds good.
Did you write those things down the side, those other ones?
Yeah.
Everybody got them written down? Now's the time to, if you haven't, now's the time to turn the page so that you've got on one page, you've got your name, and the next page, you've got your reference information, which is all this that's showing up on the bottom. All this, actually, all up. So your inner self, for example, all your vowels, your integrated self. When I explain what the numbers mean, you'll go, it's when all the good juju happens.
Law, what does it say under challenges?
In the challenge, you've got main, mid, and minor.
And what's the, and then rock?
The bottom one is called, it's hyphenated, it's called Rock in the Road.
Okay.
And for example, at one stage, I was teaching this technique to a group of guys in an ashram in a maximum security prison in Sydney. And every guy that was in this particular strange ashram that was based on a system set up by Ram Dass in America, these inter-prison systems, every guy that was in there on a robbery charge had a number 8 Rockin' Road, and everybody who was in there with an 11 on the first pinnacle, which we'll get to, was in there on drug-related charges. It was almost rollover ruffle material, except we didn't have ruffle in the day. And even the screw in the prison was doing the thing. He's sitting at this table doing the whole thing, going, hang on, how do I know this? How do I work this out? Yes. So that it's quite astonishing how this actually works, and how we can work with each other, with yourself even, to rectify problems, which we'll get around to. So everybody up to date?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody not? Put it that way.
We haven't filled in the inner self, the vowels, the integrated.
We're going to do that now.
Okay, great.
Excellent. So the inner self number, let's what we're going to do, what you want to do is you've got your chart written up with all those little things. So put where the inner self equals, put your number, with all the number of vowels. Inner self equals what number? Integrated self equals what number?
Should we put only the end result or also the
end result, unless there's master numbers in there.
Okay.
And with the master numbers, of course, we've still got the other letter, the 2 or the 4 in brackets underneath it, or beside.
Yeah, that was the bit I had a question on, in terms of what the final number is. So for my consonants, it comes to 93, and then
which is a /3. You could say it's 12/3. I tend to like to keep them all in there, Danger, because if you've got the 93 and then you / and put the 12, if it was 92 and you had a / it'd be an 11. You see, and we'd leave that one alone, and then we'd have / or put a 2 in brackets for later, because you've got 93 / 12 / 3. Did you say they're vowels or consonants?
Consonants.
So all those consonants come to a 3. So you basically, we'll get around to explaining you like chatty people.
Right. So it ends up as a 3.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's 12 or above. We break it down further.
Always break it down.
From 12 upwards. Yep.
From any number upwards. So you could have a 1,226. Break 1, 2, 2, 6 down.
Got you. All right, beautiful. Thank you.
Cool.
So, Law, we always just want a single digit number. Is that correct?
Unless it's a master number, 1122, which we've got to be careful of, just keep them in your consciousness or keep them in brackets, but definitely just break it down to the single number. Yes. Because ultimately with numbers, basically you've got 1 to 9 and then everything else is a repetition of zeros afterwards. Yeah. So 1 is 10,000 is still 1 with a lot of zeros behind it. So that if you can keep that in mind, then every number, the 8 is, it's got, if we've got 827,756, that 8 is, that 827,756 is a variation of the number 8. But you still break down that 8,726,726 into one number. Just that initially you're starting with 8,000, which is 8 with a whole lot of zeros behind it.
If my integrated number is 11, that becomes a 2.
Your integrated number is 11. Put a 2 in brackets beside that, and just keep that 11 in mind. Yes. Yes, definitely. And then you work out what the inner self number is, and then what the attractant is. And once we've done that, we're also going to get you to fill in all the extras, and I'll explain them as we go. If I can get that piece of paper back from you. Thank you. Okay, so you've done your inclusion tables. You've put the number of 1s you've got, the number of 2s you've got, you've done all that. Okay. The ruling tendency is going to be the numbers that you got the most of. So that inclusion table there will tell you the numbers that you've got the most of, the least of, and none of. Yeah. So your ruling tendency is the number that you got the most of.
In just your integrated numbers, in just your full name.
That's all we're working with at this stage. You've written down already what your inner self number is, what your integrated self number is, and what your attractant number is. We'll cover what that means in a minute. But in the meantime, let's just fulfill the criteria. So now we're only working for all these here and all these here, Sharon. We're just working all this here and all this here. We're just getting the numbers together from the integrated self. Yes.
So with the ruling tendency, if you have equal amounts, say like for me, I have equal amounts of 5s and 6s.
Yes, please put them down. You put them both down. Thank you.
So sorry, for the ruling tendency, it's the number that comes up most often in the inclusion table, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And then your key, once you've got that, your key is the number of your first name only. In your ruling tendency, in your integrated self, there's your name. This is this person's name. This person's first name is Julian. So the addition of the person's first name is called the key in that chart. Ruling tendency, the largest numbers that you've got in your integrated self, the key is from your first name. So whatever, if your first name is Julian, in this particular instance, their key is going to be a 22. So your key would be whatever your first name adds up to.
I've got a question.
Yes.
What if somebody's name has a junior on the end of it? Do you, because it's a high,
if that's on their birth certificate, however it's spelt is part of the name.
Okay, so JR if it's on the birth certificate, and completely written out junior if it's completely written out.
Name.
Okay. All right.
Good one. Fantastic. Yes, thank you.
And what about like that they're the third or the second, or you know how they do men's names sometimes?
Just if it's on their birth certificate, included how it's written. If it's written, if it's 2, you don't include it at all. However many people you find whose name's James the First or James the Second in the current era, I will eat my fucking cards. But it's a good question.
Sometimes they'll be like John Paul Smith the third.
Then they would, if that's on their birth certificate, then that's on their birth
yes.
certificate, and that you include that word third.
But what if
It's
they have
written
it
as a
written as a
2,
numeral?
you'll include it as a 2.
Okay,
However, it's written on the birth certificate
okay,
or the registration of birth. It may not be a birth certificate, different countries, different techniques, but what you're registered as after you have been expelled from a human body or a test tube, and you're written up for the first time. Battery's running low. Why is my battery running low? Okay, well,
I think to that point, Sharon, like if it's just the numerology, like if it's the number, like the 3 slashes, do you know how it's got like, instead of writing third, you don't worry about the slashes. You only worry about it if they type it out as third, which would be kind of weird, but
yeah.
Usually it's done in Roman numerals.
Yeah, so I think you forget that.
You're going off in tangents. Come on, come back to the subject. I mean, it's great. And you'll work that out as you go through. But if you come across them, phone me. We'll work it out. Okay. So as long as you've got them, you've got your integrated self, you've got your inner self, you've got your attractant, which is the outer self. You've got your ruling tendency, which is the number you've got the most number letters of. Your key, which is from your first name. You found out your weaknesses in this list is
We
going
haven't
to
done
be
foundations yet.
No, we haven't got that yet. That's the next in line. Weaknesses are the numbers that you've only got one of.
In the inclusion table, or
Yep, we're still on the same. We're not leaving the inclusion table behind for a while. We're still there.
What if you have none? What if you have no with the 1?
Pardon?
What if you have none of those?
Well, you haven't got to that yet.
That means you have no weaknesses.
That's what I'm saying.
Then you've got no weaknesses.
Oh, well then.
What if you have all of them as ones?
Pardon?
What
You're
if most of them are ones? Then most of them are weaknesses, right?
They're weaknesses, but weaknesses are not necessarily problems. They're the where the threads of the sisal rope have come a little bit undone, and you need to tighten them up. Where my little dreadlocks have come a little bit too loose, and I need to get them tidied up. It's all a matter of just getting tidied up.
Do zeros fit somewhere else, or would they?
They will fit somewhere else very definitely. We haven't got to that yet. That's going to be the bottom one. So you've got your, and for the moment, we're going to ignore the challenges because they will come from your date of birth. They will come from your, in the numerical system of this, which is going to have to do with your timings, oddly enough, but we'll get around to that. So leave them alone for the moment. We'll get back to that. But your foundation, by the way, is the first letter of your first name. That's your foundation. And you need to work with the images here. The foundation is like you're standing on a concrete fucking plinth, or you're a lighthouse looking out to sea. Your foundation is the lighthouse. So it's a very strong connection to who you are.
So if the letter is an S, the foundation would be 1. Is that right?
No, the foundation is 1, yes.
Yeah.
Now, your rock in the road is where you've got none, no letters to anything. And sometimes people will have 3 or 4 of them. No, not at all uncommon.
Laura, can you repeat the definition of rock in the road, please?
Rock in the road, I haven't even given you a definition of that yet, so I can't repeat it. What they are is zeros when you've got nothing, when you've got none of a certain letter, but I haven't told you what it actually means yet.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Give me a ha if you're all ready and up. Okay, cool. So now I'm just going to put this aside for a moment because we'll get on to part 2 of this in a minute. There's 2 sections to this technique. And believe me, you can end up, we're leaving challenges for now. Yes, I did mention that earlier, darling. We've got to wait till we get on the time sequences. Thanks, Kate, before we get onto the challenges. Before we go on further, because there is a second part of this, I'm going to give you an idea of what each number means, because each number is a personality. Okay. Each number represents an aspect of you. So, and this will go up on YouTube, but it's better if you can write them down and catch me. And if you need me to repeat it, I'm here for you. Just yell at me. So number 1, independence, individuality, self-determination, walks alone, non-reliant.
Oh, can you slow down, please?
No.
A little bit.
Independence.
I'm going to type it out. I'm a pretty fast typer, not super fast, but I'll
Thank
type
you.
it. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Independence, individuality, self-determination, walks alone, non-reliant, unique.
Ari,
Now-
we love you for that.
Huh?
Yeah. Is there any way that we can get it to stay on the screen for longer than a couple of seconds?
You go into the chat bar.
Go into the chat bar. Unique. If you go into the chat bar, I think that Ari's putting it in the side bar. And of course, I'm around all week, unless I'm dead. So I'm up for calls.
We hope you're here another week.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't leave us hanging.
So anybody with a number 1, see, trying to argue with a person with a strong, who's a very, very ruling tendency of 1, or a key of 1, or a foundation of 1. It's like, it's not that they're not going to listen to you. They'll listen to you, but they won't tell you they've listened to you. They'll go away with that and they'll think about it. And you might hate them. You'll think, you fucking piece of work. You wouldn't accept this as a conversation. But a person with a number 1 is a ruling tendency, or a foundation or a key, is going to go, I need to absorb this information and have it all work together to form an understanding. And then they'll come back to you. This is this unique pattern of people talking to each other and telling each other stories so that we can think about it. We don't have to accept straight away. But if you've got an A, it's the foundation, oh, nobody's going to tell you what to do, are they? No, they're not. Same as if you've got a J, the first name. So I got a son named Jared. Where the fuck did I do that?
I got a husband with 1.
Well, there you go. Fuck you. It's like, excuse me, I'm busy. And they're listening to you over there at the side with their heads, but they're like, particularly if you add somebody with a 1 and they've got a Pisces sun, get out of the way of the computer, because they're not going to leave the computer behind. That's what they do. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, interestingly enough, every person I've ever met who was a really cool muso has got B's and T's everywhere. It's the number of rhythm. Number 2 is also the number of cooperation and sensitivity and collaboration. Perfect example, my birthday is the 20th of a certain month, which means that my entire middle life cycle from 28 to 56 was talking one-on-one. A psychiatrist would have a strong 2. A person in Fight Club secretly would have a number 2. It's where we don't need to have a crowd. It's this one-to-one. Make really good counselors, all of you with really strong 2s. There's a vulnerability to each one. Don't need to have a crowd. Good counselors, right? There's a vulnerability to each number, but we'll get around to them as we get further on. The vulnerability of the 1, oh no, we won't. We'll do it as we go. The vulnerability of the 1 is their inability to cooperate. So they're affected by 2 numbers. They're affected disproportionately by the number 9, which comes before the 1, and the number 2, which comes theoretically after the 1. Do you get me? So that number 1 people, if they're vulnerable or they're weak with that number, they need to stabilize that sense of independence by collaboration, which is the number 2. We'll get around to the 9 as we get there. But the number 9 can be both problematic and excellent, depending on how it's utilized. Okay. So number 3.
Hang on, what's the challenge with number 2 then? Because you just gave us number 1.
Well, I haven't got around to challenge. Oh, number 2 challenge, for example, would be an inability to work without asking a question. An inability to run with research independently of another person, to do your own work. The other thing with number 2 is they can listen, but they don't necessarily think enough independently, which is that number 1, to be able to communicate back, which is the number 3. Can you hear how this works? So number 3, if we can get on to the next one, number 3 is communication, self-expression, the lighter side of life. It is always an optimistic number. Now, what's the problem with number 3s? Saying fucking nothing and talking and never actually meaning anything. So that a person who's got a strong 3, I write for a living and I talk for a living. So you can hear how that's actually, thanks Jackie Robertson Swan, I got it young. I write for a living and I talk for a living. So it's communication, self-expression, the lighter side of life, optimism, a sense of humor. If it is out of balance, it's people who talk a lot and say nothing. If it's out of balance, again, almost like a challenge, it's someone who's shut down, who's shut up and not allowed to communicate. Therefore, the next number, which is 4, it's going to be their box. It's going to put them in the fucking box and shut them. Then a person with a strong 3 who talks too much needs the balancing aspect of that number 2, which is collaboration and cooperation. Yes?
Yes, that's totally me.
Also, do you play a musical instrument? Because you, with that strong, that's exactly sometimes the communication that's missing will come out with this by utilizing the use of music to express yourself, as in the number 2. That'll balance that out as well. Okay. Yes.
Hey, Laura.
Who's next? Who's up?
I just wanted to say that I have memory in my notes actually from the first collective that I did with you.
Yep.
That in regards to 2, you said that the 2 person has a sensitivity to music as well.
Yep, definitely.
Which I could really relate to, things like bodily sensations or like tears induced from music and that kind of thing, that their sensitivity to music
not
is
quite
really
the same thing, because all of us have bodily reactions to certain kind of music, but every person that I've ever known whose name was Ben played a musical instrument.
Yeah.
Every person whose name is Tim plays a musical instrument. All works of martial art, go figure. So there's the example of those number 2s. Number 3, cooperation, communication, self-expression, the lighter side of life. Number 4, which a lot of people denigrate, I find very strong number, because each of these, by the way, can be represented by a symbol. So I'm going to draw these upside down. There's your number 1.
Sharpie.
What was that?
Your Sharpie?
My Sharpie. Probably buried here somewhere. There it is.
Really can see it. Not for you.
Oh, for me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to very quickly do these here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on, like so. You can see there's your patterns all the way up through 9. Yes, cool. So that's kind of what they look like. So when you get to number 4, you're looking at this box. Okay, because number 4 represents hard work, and stability. And did I say hard work? I'll say it again, hard work. What's important with that number 4 is whether or not you find yourself trapped in the box or standing on the box. That's your gift. That's your challenge if you've got a strong 4, either as a ruling tendency, as a foundation, as an integrated self, as an inner self, as an attractant. Do you find yourself trapped in the box or standing on the box? Thank you, Ari. An attractant, what you need to do is to work out whether you're in the box or on the box. And if you're in the box, get the fuck out of the box.
So when you're talking about a strong number or strong influence, you mean literally anywhere here and anywhere up here?
Yes.
We're looking at all these numbers.
We're looking at the whole lot.
Sweet.
Yes. Okay, so number 4, if you're in the box, how do you work it out? Number 3, communicate with people. Start to talk. Okay, excuse me, I'll just get rid of bits of shit that are turning up my screen. Start to talk, but also we're going to, even though we haven't got to number 5 yet, remember that as a number 4, if you feel yourself trapped, utilize the number 5. So you're always going to work with the numbers before or after if you've got a problem with a specific number. Number 5 is considered to be, and I am quoting, number 5 is considered to be the number of the modern day gypsy. I know that the word gypsy is a disparative word towards the Rom and a word towards the Look at a Shula. And for people that are gypsy or that are working with, that are Indigenous travelers, I will suggest an apology right now, but that was what I was taught. The number of the modern day gypsy. It's also considered to be the number of intellectual and sexual stimulation. And there is one main word that is associated with the number 5, and that is change. So, of course, I don't need to have those down. Of course, you learn from the number 6. If you've got very strong 5s, you're unable to sit still. You're fucking non-stop. You can't sit still. You need to travel. You've got to move. You're attracted to people all the time. All your juices are going, doesn't matter, whatever your gender. It's like, look at that. A little bit of snort, a little bit of snuggle, a little bit of all those things. They're really strong in the number 5. Okay, that's big one. Okay. The capacity to, the need to travel, this somewhere in you is a nomadic person who needs to move from place to place, and whether that's, I mean, it's ultimately got to be the number of anthropology, doesn't it? Exploring different cultures, exploring the languages, a person who's linguistic, a person who's working with different cultures, etc. Yes, one could break it down to the idea of a social worker, but I'm not going to, because that's too limited. That's a bit nothing. Number 4, that's got to touch number 5 on the side.
So, Laura, when we do this, if you have like really close ruling tendencies, so if you have, say you have 5 number 5s and 4 number 6s, do you only count the 5?
It depends on where, no. It depends on where they fall. I mean, if you're talking about, where's the number, a lot of 6s, for example. How many 6s you got there?
I have, for the whole thing, I think I might have done this wrong. I had 7 5s, and you said to make it 5.
Yeah, so you've obviously got a lot of 5s and you need to travel. Or you go mad.
And it's in my second name.
Doesn't matter what falls in your name. No. Your whole name is your name.
Right.
Integrated self is your name. We're not interested in first and second names. Fuck that off. Just the whole thing, yes? So if you've got 5 5s, because you've taken 2 away, then you've obviously got ruling tendency of 5. If you have got how many sixes?
I've got lots of threes as well. I don't have that many sixes.
How many sixes?
I've got 2 6s, but I have
2 6s is not a ruling tendency, not a lot.
no, but I have 4, 5 3s.
Well, then your 3s and your 5s are going to be your ruling tendency, and we'll take them into account. But you haven't got a lot of 6s, no. So you don't need to learn. So you're learning from anything dysfunctional to do with the 5 is going to have to do with the 6, which we haven't covered yet. And it's also going to have to do with the 4, which is this need for stability and at least a sense of like having really strong foundations to do with your ideology, who you are, what earths you, what grounds you. It'd be the same principle, I suppose, of attempting to put on a battery without a negative element. That would be a typical number 5. I'll leave the negative element off. Whereas in actual fact, you need that negative element to sort of like ground you and earth you. Otherwise, you're a lightning rod. Yeah. Okay, so once you've got that 4 stabilized, I mean, I don't know how somebody with a lot of number 5s is even alive and hasn't cut their throat all through this whole lockdown period of time, for the simple reason that when a number 5 is really strong, it's like your legs have been cut off at the knees, because the need to move from place to place is so strong. It's a very overwhelming urge. You are nomadic by nature. So number 5, that's number 5. Number 6. Number 6 is considered the number of service. It represents home and family, the capacity to nurture, the capacity to feel compassion. They all fit in with that number 6. I have yet to meet anybody working in the health profession who hasn't got a strong 6. Strong 6s and strong 2s fit in there. Yeah. That's 6 in there. So it's got to do with nurturing, home. So, I mean, you know, it's the oddest of things. I'm very aware that 2 of my offspring were 9 years apart, but they were both born in number 6 personal years. Ha, 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 ha. It's like fucking almost case history of it. But the number 6. And so a person who's very much a nurturer, very much a compassionate, able to work with that, and they find that restricting, they need to join Médecins Sans Frontières, don't they? Get themselves to a war zone. Go into an Indigenous community in the West Papua Highlands. That's what a person who's got that number 6 and strong number 6s or weak number 6s needs to promote it within the healing industry, is to be in an environment that's got the number 5 and also the number 7, which is introspection and study and self-analysis associated with it. But as long as you know what that 6 represents holistically, we're going to do fine. Let's get on to the number 7. Number 7, number 7 is self-analysis, education, the ability to study, the ability to seek self-counsel. It can be a lonely number, but then I suppose in many ways, so could number 1 be considered a lonely number, but only if the numbers before and after are not being employed. Do you get me? So that with the number 7, of course, what you want is that number 6, the ability to communicate. I'm going to turn this, I'll leave it where it is, with family, or to set up a home, to be able to nurture, to be able to sort of like have a roost, bring all your spare puppies in, for goodness sakes, put them all in the backyard, feed them, all your street hounds that have been left alone. In the person with a number 7, you may very well find them after the bushfires. They're there with their cages and their baskets and their bottles of water. They're going in there to find the koalas. And they're going in there to find out that the animal people that have been harmed, and they're going to bring them to safety. That's what that number 7 person is going to do. That's how they're going to collaborate with the number 6, you see. And of course, none of us are going to end up species differentiating. That's just part of this. We don't become bigots against species. We don't call species it. Okay, so that's really significant. And a person with a number 7 can be so introspective that they don't know how to deal with their money, and therefore they can learn from the number 8, as well as by setting themselves around home and family and feeling like they've got to cooperate. And developing a form of empathy is necessary for a person with that 7, because so many people that I've met in my life have been educators, and most educators haven't got a fucking empathetic bone in their bodies. It's driven out of them because they have to end up schooling people and not educating and not doing this interrelationship with people. Yeah. So number 8 is a number of money, finances, organizational abilities, managerial abilities. A producer of film, television, live performances, they've got a number 8. Someone who works in a bank, they've got a good, strong number 8. A person who can organize their profit and loss statements, which we'll probably get around to next week or the week after that for all of you people who have got no fucking idea how to do a profit and loss statement. That's necessity. I know, smart ass, I like, but it's true. And as such, a lot of people working in these mystical arts become endangered because they haven't got a strong 8. So that you're at the behest of Social Security cops turning up. You can't explain, you can't use your number 7, for example, to work by explaining or documenting, if you like, the argument you may need if you're going to be going to court under the Fraudulent Medium Act. Need that to be able to be in a situation where nobody's partner can turn up and say, I'm going to have a piece of you, I'm going to turn you into Centrelink. If you're not in Centrelink in the first place because you're a legitimate person, you put your tax forms in every year, no one can touch you. That's number 8. And that's interesting because number 8, I'm just going off track for a second. I have a rock in the road of 8. So my rock in the road of 8, which means that I'm lousy with money. It can come in really quickly and it's gone. And most creatives have no 8s, by the way. No 8s and no fucking 6s. And sometimes no 2s. And the only way we learn is by the numbers before and after. And of course, with that number 8, if it's a problem, you learn from the capacity to be introspective and self-analysis, which says, oops, I think I better be safe as possibly can be. And you're not safe if you haven't taken care of that number and made it certain. For example, I can produce huge, big productions. And I'm this weird looking person who's actually an absolute pedant to the smallest details of anything when it comes down to sort of like getting ready for a Zoom group like this. I've got all these systems going on, trying to get it all sorted out. I've even tried to get even tried to get sort of the music from ready to go through the waiting room today. I'll have it for next week. That's that.
Thank you.
That's at number 8. I'm going, okay, I want to be able to sort of like give you some Journey to the Center of the Earth by Rick Wakeman. Went and got that downloaded last night, ready to upload today for your waiting room thing. And instead of that, got locked out. Fucking go figure. Okay. Yes, this is probably.
I've got a question. Yeah, you gave us symbols for each of the numbers, but not 7, 8, and 9.
You don't need to. You can do them. Any symbols will do. They're not fixed symbols. They're just logical symbols.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I just wondered if you had any more.
Okay, yeah, because
I was going to ask the same question.
How many patterns in the weaving behind you? You'll find them. You can create them yourself. Yeah. Okay. Number 9. Number 9 is the number of endings, completions. A lot of people with strong 9s are alcoholics. A lot of people with strong 9s are drug addicts. And a lot of people with strong 9s, even if they seem productive, can't finish anything they start.
Shit.
I know. So if you work it by the 8 and you work it by the 1. You can work it. The other thing number 9 is called it's called the Einstein number. Because with a number 9, if you try to love one person, you are fucking yourself up.
So if that's a
How is that
weakness,
related to
then I don't
Einstein?
finish things.
And one at a time, what was that?
How is that related to Einstein?
There's the intense capacity to go deeply into almost the stratosphere, to pull out vast quantities of information that can then benefit, for lack of a better word, humanity.
So as a weakness, that means I can't finish things?
Yeah. And it also, you've got to watch yourself overindulgences. Anybody with that number 9, if it's a weakness or if it's showing up as actually too strong, overindulgences, drugs, alcohol, food, porn, gambling, sugar, sentimentality, they're all any overindulgence is overindulgence. So they need to pull back from that. And of course, you're using the number 7 there, which is reflection, self-reflection. And then you're using the number 8 to organize your life so that it's not taking over. But also a person with a strong number 9 will make a great vet. Or animal rights and rescue, someone who's also working for Medicine Sans Frontières, a person who's working on a large humanitarian project. People with number 9s that are strong or very weak, they love too much. And when that sounds odd, doesn't it? But when you love too much, you can drown a person with your love. You can suffocate the fuck out of anybody who's got a strong 1. So if you can spread that love out, that you can be with a partner, you can be in a polyamorous situation, you can have 10 dogs and 15 cats and 5 horses and 11 parakeets and a lover and a partridge in a pear tree, you're absolutely where you need to be. You're going to benefit from that wideness of love, that vastness of love. Anybody working in ecological in areas to do with preservation. Quite often you'll find archaeologists working in the field. They've got strong 9s as well. A lot of scientists. If you can write down a name and then look her up, her name is Red Joan. Red, R-E-D, Joan, J-O-A-N. And just to maybe even find out that person's full name and see what she's got as far as 9s are concerned. If anybody doesn't know who she is, she's the person who gave the mathematics for the atomic bomb to Russia after the Second World War, because she realized that America had dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and went, if no one person should have this knowledge, this wisdom. And so she became accused eventually in her 80s, I think it was, of being a spy. But she said, if I gave it to everybody, nobody's going to do it on each other. And they haven't since. So concepts of right and wrong get very muddied here, don't they? Because what Red Joan in her own way has done is stopped a Third World War, an atomic bomb, because one person having all that power is dangerous. That's number 1. What she's done is humanitarian. So that number 9 is she spread it right out. Sort of get it? So the 11, now 11's 22 and 33s. It's a very interesting phenomenon to live in a capitalist society when you've got utterly mystical numbers. 11s, 22s, and 33s are they're the dreamer, the person who stares out the fucking window when they're a 12-year-old and the teacher comes up and slaps them on the fucking arm, says, wake up. And that person is awake. But what they're doing is they're dreaming. And they may also be dreaming because the information in front of them, which has got to do with how to bake a lamington, is completely and absolutely farcical. And they may not want to express that, and they may not even know it consciously. But in the belly of them, they go, I don't want to make lamingtons. I'd rather learn how to kill a kangaroo. So they've got to that 11 is like hyper working away. So what happens in so many instances is you'll find that that person with their strong 11 as a key, as a foundation, if a person's got a K, for example, is their first name, as a foundation. If it's a weakness, for example, if it's in there at all, it's going to mean you've got that capacity to work at a vast, large scale, but you need to go to the Amazon and hang around with some first contact people for a while. Otherwise, you're just going to turn to the booze or methamphetamine to attempt to get your kicks, because you're not going to get them from a society that's closed down into this moral attitude or this ethical attitude that's associated with money, finances, and capitalism. Do you understand? Does that make sense? It can be so deluded. It's so deluded. Or I don't know, deluded is the wrong word. Despairing of a society that doesn't work with its creative arts.
Is it also disillusioned?
Disillusioned with it. Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. That's the word I'm after. Because, of course, a person who's got very strong 11 says, there's another way of doing things besides putting everything in alphabetical order and keeping it neat. It's an interesting phenomenon occurred a while back. I don't remember all the names, too much information sits in this brain sometimes. But there were two people in Australia, one of whom was one of the first person working with One Nation, and they went from community to community of Indigenous First Nation people, and they ended up in utopia. Anybody know of a utopia in Australia? See, we don't have the words the same as in America. They call them the res. Yeah. We don't call these communities a reservation for Indigenous people, but that's what they are. They're prisons. Black Hills of Dakota, there's a res, that's the people of the res. They're residential schools, all these places where their people were cornered and trapped, who were used to being nomadic and had their own ways. So this has been completely blinkered. So that, you know, if people bothered in Indigenous communities with first names and they were all 11s, then it makes sense to me. But for example, these people went to utopia, and not only did the person from One Nation say, you people should clean up after yourselves, you rubbish is everywhere, and there's no rubbish removal service for thousands of kilometers. They're also very aware that if you leave all your cans in the garden, something's going to inhabit them. So like a sunken ship that's going to end up being a reef for certain species, how do we think? So that number 11 goes, I don't necessarily care about that because it doesn't really matter. And when you follow the logic of a number 11 person, of course, they're correct. They see things differently. But if you see things differently to the status quo, you could be considered mad when in actuality you're a poet. Do you understand what I'm saying? It all depends on how you look at certain things, understandings. Some people, for example, I would not at all be surprised if people who are savants had a very strong 11. They couldn't be bothered with things like whether or not they've got to use tweezers to pull hairs out of their eyebrows. I'm not at all bothered. Okay, that number 22, but of course that number 11 can be broken down to a 2. So it does, because the dreamer does need to cooperate, collaborate, would need communication with other people. So they can suffer incredible isolation and loneliness. And with incredible isolation and loneliness, that number 11 turns to the bottle or they turn to drugs. And usually with the drugs, I mentioned methamphetamine earlier, but no, usually they take to the soporifics like heroin, Oxycontin, anything that sort of like calms the mind down. And there's a lot of them. The number 22, which is more common, interestingly enough, lots of people with the name of Virginia, Vera, whatever. That number 22 is an interesting number because it's been coined as the Martin Luther King number. It's the same visionary as for an 11, but it's someone who works through an institutional body like the a university or a medical institution or an organization, even the military, they will change the system from within. That 22, that's what that 22 does. That taste of it in your skin, you can taste it, so they can change the situation from within. So it's interesting that the person concerned, for example, who had a very strong number 7 may have created the drug thalidomide and thought it was a really great idea, but the person with the number 22 have said this is not a good drug. And they've had enough statistics to have it removed from the market so that no pregnant women ever had to utilize that drug again. That's how this works. Yes, it can get broken down into a 4. So again, it could be because of the institutionalization, the person can become quite stuck and rigid if they're not careful. If they don't travel enough, a person with a good number 22 needs to get to Machu Picchu, needs to go to Catachuta, needs to be able to get to sort of the backwoods of New Mexico to be able to liberate themselves and loosen up a little bit by that, of course, with that, the 3 or the 5 that's on either side of that 4 in an ordinary system. You with me? Yeah. And number 33, you hardly ever get it. When you do get it, it's like, meh. It's so rare that the person concerned could seem like an utter fuckwit. And some instances of insanity, the person has a very strong 33 and they'll end up in a mental institution from some form of breakdown or other. So I don't necessarily find the master numbers to be beneficial. Over a lifetime, I haven't found them to be beneficial. A lot of, like I said earlier, when I was in the maximum security prison teaching the guys their numerology, every single guy who was in there with the first pinnacle, and we haven't got to the pinnacles yet, the first pinnacle, they were all in there. They all had an 11 on their first pinnacle, or as a foundation, or as a key. It always ended up there, and it was like the Anandamaga bombers were in my group. So they had their reasons for wanting to put the so-called bomb in the garbage bin. And none of you, you're all too young to fucking remember that. But however, they were in this group. A lot of people that will create so-called terrorist activities. It depends on who's looking at that activity. A terrorist is a terrorist because they're defined as a terrorist by a hegemony that considers that form of terrorism not as good as the form of terrorism we've got. A friend of mine who's involved in a postgraduate study in terrorism maintained that the greatest terrorists in the world were the people with the strongest firepower. They seem like the greatest peacemakers, but they're not. We all know what I'm talking about. I don't have to spell it out for you. So there, how all this works. And the number 33 person would do well to establish a sense of like compassion. That number 6 comes into balance for them. They would end up being very comfortable if they've got a home to live in, other species to care for. I don't think they're particularly wonderful around kids. Off with the pixies somewhere. But I think in my lifetime, as far as 33 fitting in with a person's name, I might have come across it 3 times. Sometimes it'll fit in with the dates of a person's life, but we haven't got to that yet. That's going to be part 2 of this today. So you've got a feeling for where these numbers sit in your charts. Yes. Now, your inner self, is that part of yourself, for example, that's associated with the vowels? I'm just backtracking, by the way. Is this part 4, part 5? Doesn't matter. Backtracking. Inner self, the part of you, the consciousness of you that no one can ever see. They'll never see you. You'll know it. You'll sense it. You'll feel it. You may not even be able to explain it. You don't have to explain it. No one needs to see that. No one will see that. I'm pausing while you write that down, however you want to write it. Thank you, Ari. It's funny, I apologize for using the part of you because we're not in parts. So let's just say it'll be the you people never see. That's preferable. And the you that thinks, contemplates, dreams, envisions. The you that researches but can't explain your research to anybody else. The contemplation of the dot. So that's your inner self. The integrated self is you walking tall. That's all. That's all you need to put.
I'm sorry, it broke up. Could you say it again?
The integrated self is you walking tall.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, even if you're 4 foot, 2 foot high. When you walk tall, this sense of like, I don't have to justify myself to anybody. I don't have to explain myself to you. It's who you are. Do people see who you are? It's the same phenomenon as utopia, where nobody necessarily knows what those tin cans are all about, but it's who you are fully. So the consonants are n, v, m, b, t, j, s. They are not, wow, we are. They're the hard fluctuations. Some languages like Czech, they are made up, and parts of Slavic countries, they're made up of all consonants. The same with the letters of the Hebrew alphabet that we're working in Kabbalah. There are no vowels. A is not even considered a vowel in the Hebrew language. It's Aleph. They're not considered as vowels. Consonants are the hard sounding. Okay, yes, thank you, Ari. These are considered the attractants. So that number, which has come from all your consonants, are the aspects of you that people will see. And they're also the aspects of you that you will show people. The consonants represent your capacity to fit in with the group. Is it an untrue self? Not at all. But it's just not your integrated self. It's just not the inner self. That's all. Sometimes we've got to put on these faces and wear these garments to fit in with a particular group. If the cattle trucks are coming. Yeah. So we've got to do what we've got to do, and we've got to relate to certain kinds of people. But it's very interesting when some people, for example, may have a master number of 11 as an attractant. They're going to attract fools. People are going to look at them and go, oh, they're a mystic. Oh, they have. And it's like behind the scenes is the person who has got way too much 9 going on, way too much 1 and way too much 3. So they'll talk a whole fucking lot and not say anything. And they'll say me, which is that 1. But behind that with the 11 is the kumbaya, Lord, here, kumbaya. And that's what we're seeing. And that's what people are seeing in us, but it's not necessarily who we are. Do you get me? People might think I'm an 11. I'm not a fucking 11.
I did just hear you sing Kumbaya though. That's in my pocket. That was a first.
Yeah, you pick up on my 4s. Takes a lot to sit there quiet and calmly, getting in as heavily as I have. Okay, so knowing that about your numbers, you can then fit them in. So your integrated self is the whole walk tall. Inner self is the aspect of you that no one else can really know. Where am I up to? Piece of paper. Okay, so your attractant is what brings you to. Pardon?
A question. What if someone has the same number in their integrated self and attractant?
Really cool question, because the more numbers that you have that are the same, the stronger you are.
Okay.
The more the numbers coincide, the easier it is. That's very important. That's a very important question. Thank you for that. When your numbers are super fucking messy, so are you. We are looking for likenesses and samenesses in this system because they do come together. And it's that symbol that if you put 3 people together, you got a strength.
So I have a question,
Yes.
if I may ask. So like where before we in the inclusion table that you talked about 5s or like having a massive amount of 5s.
Yes.
I actually have got 4 5s, which reduces, when I take 2 away, it reduces them to a 2.
2's normal.
But what that, yeah, but what that,
can
I finish my question?
Yes.
What that does is it makes my ruling tendency would be a 5, right? But it ends up being a 6, which is like I've got 2 6s. So it works out. I know I've got 3 6s. It just works. I don't know. It sort of like takes that 5 away where it would be a ruling tendency for me.
Well, of course it does. And I can see exactly that 6 is your ruling tendency through your work in the world.
Yeah.
Your work in the world is not the work in the world of a 5. Your work in the world is the work of and I do know this person, people, so I apologize for being secretive, but you are going to read their tarot later on. So I prefer to be quiet, but your work in the world, from what I know of you, is very 6. There's many other aspects, but that 6 is strong. It's a healer. And healers can be all kinds of people. I was walking through Bunnings one day, a while back, and this is having to deal with a 49-year-old son who's at his deathbed from alcoholism and who wanted to take on the owners of the property who were killing him because of the mold. And he was this is a few months earlier this year, very angry and very uptight and very aggressive about it all. And the healer that I met this particular day, I'm walking through Bunnings and this guy is coming towards me and he's got tattooed on the inside of one arm in a peculiar codec. And I didn't know what the codec was. And I went up to him and I said, is it okay if I ask you what this means? And he said, if you got angry, they've won. So that night I spoke to my eldest son and I gave him that information that it had come from a secret god, a way shower, and
in Bunnings,
the temple Bunnings that I wrote an ode to in my new book. And that was all I needed. I walked out of the shop again. I forgot everything. Oh, no, I don't fucking need anything. That was that was that person's capacity to give me healing information that I then passed on that night to my son. I said, if they've made you angry, you've lost. That was it. And he's using that now.
Yeah.
To calm down in the midst of what appears to be difficult court actions. You get me? But it calmed down enough to get him out of a situation that was potentially deadly. That's big healing coming from a so-called total stranger. But of course we're not. So where are we up to? Okay.
Could I ask a quick question?
You can ask anything else. Where are we?
So with the inner self, integrated self, and outer self, you said as far as looking for patterns, like my inner self and my outer self add up to my integrated self.
Yep.
Is that of interest or desire?
That's a harmony.
Right.
It's always when the numbers are the same, it's a harmony. You have it's there. Quite often people need, through the ancestral lineage, they've learned to develop certain patterns of self-protection, self-preservation, so they will hide their inner self rather than show that to the world because they may not trust. And trust is an earned thing. It's not something you should give easily. You take your time, you find out a person, what they're like. And one of the most important things I think about trust is consistency.
Yep.
So when that consistency also comes across to the numerology, so that if you find the numbers that are consistently patterning each other, you haven't got much discord to work through. That's just it. Does it mean you've got nothing to work through? Of course not. We've all got things to work through. That makes life interesting. But the less you've got to work through, the easier it is. Okay. Right.
Cool. Thank you.
We up to date? Because that's only part one of this.
I just want to
We
check
gotta
what
learn
I
what the
worked
rock
out.
in the road is.
Sorry.
Rock in the road. We're almost there. One more question over the other side of the table here.
Yeah.
And I have one too.
No, hang on, wait, pause.
All right, so over here, when you've got the strong numbers, which will be around here, but on the inclusion table, 0 of what will be a strong number, what does that mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we haven't got there yet. These are the patterns. This is getting really complicated. So we'll go to the rock in the road. This was called something else by Jackie Robertson Swan. I call it the rock in the road because I don't want to steal from another people's culture, which she did even back in the 70s when I got this information. The rock in the road, I have had to think this through. How does this work? Because it's not, when you've got no numbers, doesn't mean that there's no numbers. It means there's no apparent influence from those numbers. When you've got no numbers, it means there's a slight influence from every other one of the numbers. So you've got to get the sweetness, the juice from contemplating the other numbers, and just by allowing yourself to suck on the juice of those different fruit. Nom, 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 nom. But if you've got yes, huge numbers of people who don't call their kids accordingly, huge numbers of people have for some reason not got an 8. And it's a funny, if I can give you a pattern, it's an odd pattern. A lot of people that work in big business, insurance, organization, etc., have got strong 2s, 4s, 6s, and 8s. A lot of creatives, people who work in the mystical arts, people who work in humanities, people who work in as authors, writers, all the arts, they've got good, strong 1s, 3s, 5s, 7s, and 9s. Always. So a lot of people sitting here or in the room at the moment with us would have a problem around, would have rock in the road of 2s, 4s, 6s, or 8s. Can I get a yes?
Yes.
Okay. That's because you look at the world of John Howard and Scott Morrison and you go, what the fuck is that all about?
Just don't even, yeah.
Okay, don't even go there. People the people who set up the superannuation scheme, who the fuck are you? What the fuck is that all about? Okay. The creative spirit doesn't have a built-in switch that requires accumulation for the sake of accumulation. We are more likely to go, oh, I got 10 grand, great, I'll buy a yurt. And they'll spend it straight away. Okay. Of course, I've got problems with 6s and 8s. Now, the rock in the road says these are not insurmountable problems. What they are is one needs to develop a different way of viewing that number. So, for example, with an 8, I'll stick with the number 8 because half the people here, that's an assumption, I guess, but would have an 8 rock in the road. And that rock in the road says you're going to have difficulties with money. You're going to have difficulties with money because it could come really quickly and then go just as fast. You could have difficulty with money. So we need to think about the idea of commerce or finances or fiscal security or that from a different viewpoint to the idea of being a money manager as such in an occupational kind of sense. So it's more to explore the concept of wealth and poverty from the angle that you're at. and then to explore how you can implement that concept of wealth in an honorable and honest way. Okay.
Laura,
Yes.
I have a question. So what if my rock on the road is 8
Yeah.
and my integrated and my attractor is 8 as well?
Yeah.
Do I have the potential then to kind of get past that?
Well, you are ordinarily an organized person. That's your integrated self of 8. You are an organized person. You can probably, if you wanted to or you desired to, you would probably make a very good producer. So you could work with setting up events, but you're doing that from the compassionate place with that 8 is a rock in the road, not from like, I'm going to suck in the money from this, mate. So it's a different viewpoint as to why you would actually do those or set those organizational skills into place. You have them as part of your whole self, which is where it fits in with the integrated self. But with it as an attractant, you're also going to go, oh, that person over there's got 17 million bucks. I can set this show up by talking to them and getting them to be their sponsor of this show by putting in $1 million bucks. You see, that's the way that the thinking will take you around the problem, and you recognize the show or all the performers as the wealth, and the way the story is then sent to the public as the wealth, rather than the money, which money just buys us shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear a lot of people at the moment, they're bitching on about billionaires having too much wealth. And I'm going, no, the person who lives in an Amazon jungle who's never had to buy a popsicle, they've got the wealth. So that's the way we tend to think. It's a different viewpoint of what defines the idea of wealthy and poor. I watch all of these big organizations that are supposedly charitable organizations that go into places like in the Philippines, in parts of Africa. No one mentions that these countries were invaded by colonist hegemonies that have taken away the capacity to live independent of this financial system. So that, for example, you'll get people who 50 years ago were in their tribal clothing and nowadays wearing Adidas t-shirts. This is where the manipulation has actually come. Coca-Cola is a perfect example. I mean, there are countries in Morocco that hardly ever see a fucking camel, but there's a Coke stand. So the consciousness of somebody who's got abundant 8s is, how do I take away these people's freedom and make them pay? That affects every part of my flesh and blood body. You understand that concept of wealth through even the people, for example, who are investors in Rio Tinto. I have these great dilemmas of consciousness that go, I drive a car. Why would I want to protest against Rio Tinto? And it's simply the fact that there's no honor of Pachamama or of the earth environment. There's just like a person who's got a strong 8 as a ruling tendency, for example, they don't always care about where the money comes from. A person who's got a rock and a road of an 8 actually wonders about that. They will do well. If it's a rock in the road of 8, you do work well from 7, which is study, self-analysis, being able to sort of like accumulate information, research. And a person with a rock in the road of number 9 does need to look at the whole humanitarian ideology or idea that comes from, for example, we're drilling for oil, but we're not going to do it in the Bass Strait where it's going to influence the 12 apostles and it's going to influence the seal colonies, and the sonar of my building will not influence the whales on their passage to the Antarctic. So if those considerations were taken, that person would have an 8 rock in the road. But they would be taking into consideration the other aspects of what they were doing around the financial consciousness of their work. Do you sort of see that? And that's what happens with the number 8 rock in the road. Let me get some other ones so that I know. Well, who else has got a different one?
I have the 4.
Number 4 rock in the road just basically means you need systems. You need to keep lists of everything. Your lists, my darling, will save your day. List, paper trails. Making very certain you keep paper trails from beginning to end, all the way through. Keep your tax forms. Make sure you've got any disputes you may be going through to do with love, intimacy, children, parents, or whatever. Keep your paper trails, because in the end, you can write your document for the court based on those paper trails. That's how that one works with the number 4. Plus, on top of that, you can get too caught up in being safe. If you get too caught up in being safe with the number 4, you need the presence of a number 3, which is that expression, self-expression, and then number 5, which is book your ticket. Yeah, and then it kind of liberates it. But at the same time, if you think of that number 4 as entrapping, it's going to fuck you up, because it's not entrapping. It's a very strong place to be, that number 4. If you utilize it as a stand, a place to spread your legs akimbo and go, I'm holding the space. So a person with a strong number 4, you off?
I'll catch up with that on
Okay,
YouTube
definitely.
later. Thank you. I've got to go to work.
I know.
I love you.
Love you. Bye. Okay, so if you've got a number 4, you need to be able to say, this is the space and I'm going to protect this space. And a number 4 with a strong rock in the road, also there would be the possibility. If somebody who was, for example, going, oh, look at all the stray dogs on the street. Okay, this place has been hit by an earthquake. All the people have left. There is no food available to them. What do I do? And you'd set up a place for the feeding to take on. So there's again, that sense of like, create the change, use that 4 in such a way as it doesn't necessarily show up as limitations. Yes, you've got to work hard with it. But I mean, honestly, hard work is fabulous. Hard work is fabulous. I mean, I love hard work. We have a whole generation. My grandchildren are growing up without hard work, and they are going to end up with psychological dysfunctions. They will end up with addictions if they're not careful. We need to put kids to work when they're 4. Put them on when they're 3 and 4, get them digging ditches. Teach them how to read or write. All of these learning processes are really important for children. Children don't want to just muck around. They get bored shitless. They want to know that they're part of a community. And they're not just part of a community if they're left to play. They need responsibility. Children love responsibility. Okay, anybody else?
7?
Yep.
Can I ask, what's the difference between the ruling tendency and the key in the way of like how it plays out in your personality? Like,
okay, the ruling tendency is something that you can't kind of stop. Yeah, you can't stop.
Okay.
Like I've got a 3 ruling tendency, so I talk a lot. Yeah. And the key is something that I'll use it. So for example, what's your key?
4.
So you use that hard work ethic, that whole idea of working hard would mean that some things, for example, say you were learning to get involved with filmmaking. If you're getting involved in filmmaking, you need to study and learn all the different techniques of how a thing works filmically with a clip, how much air on one side to another. I can remember I watched the film Robin Hood, not for the sake of enjoying the film, but for the sake of taking each clip apart and finding out that each one was underneath 3 seconds. That's how you use that number 4 as a key. You actually use it to analyze and train yourself in. For example, a good example is a number 4 as a, did you say it's a key?
Yeah.
Okay, as a number 4, as a good example, if a person was involved in dance, it's the number of hours you put into following up on the choreography until your body does what your brain can do, what your brain thinks it can do. We can think I can do that kata in a martial art, but until we've done it in such a time as our foot will turn 45 degrees without even thinking, we haven't mastered that number 4. So that number 4 can be really handy for you to go over and over and over and over and over what you need to do to take you to the next phase of where you want to experience life. So that's how key works. Good question. Next one.
Can
Anybody
I
else?
just say, I just want to say, so we covered like inner self, integrated self, and the attractant, and then we skipped ahead to rocking the road, but we haven't actually gone over those other ones, have we?
Quickly, yeah. The weaknesses are just those things you need to work on.
Okay.
Okay. We haven't covered the challenges. Keys we just talked about a second ago.
Yeah.
Ruling tendency we've also talked about. They're where
What
you
about
get the most
foundation?
of. And again, to balance them out, you look at the numbers on either side of them.
And then foundation?
The foundation, is that what you-
built on?
the foundation supports you. So it's an aspect of you that's very strong, that is a support. But again, if you had a foundation of 3, I'd be pulling on a 7 to be able to back up what I was saying with the researched information or the analysis that goes with it. You with me?
I have a 1 as a foundation and a 1 as a ruling tendency.
Okay, well, you can be a control freak.
Yes. I know.
So the balancing that out by the 2s and the 9s, really important, or people won't want to listen to you. Unless there's a sense of sharing, which is what their 2 comes in, they're going to think that you're just doing all the talking and it's of no benefit to anybody. So just break that open that way. They're great numbers to have, but they can get you down. And if there are too many of them, they can suffocate your creativity. Yeah. So we all the time need to learn to not so much modify ourselves as become art forms that's multi-textured. Yes, we're like a tartan of different ways of the being, so that we become eventually, I mean, ultimately, my grandchildren think I'm hot. If I hadn't done the work, they wouldn't, to get me. So it's all about what kind of work are you doing? And every time, please think of the 7th generation. Even a person who decided not to have children, think of the 7th generation, because you don't know when it's going to affect you. When what you've learned is going to be the gem, like that guy with the tattoo on his inner arm. Though this work can be and maybe once in your life that the people need who you are. But if it comes down to like a George Miller film and you get on the next set of Fury Road and you're one of those old ladies with the AK-47, fucking you better do it well. You use that 4, use those 1s. Okay.
So what happens if you have a foundation of 11?
If you have a foundation, your dreaming is so important. Your capacity to imagine. As long as you've got a 4 in there somewhere and you've got a 2 in there and you've got a 6 in there to back that up, you can bring it into manifestation.
So my attractant is 4 and my foundation is 11.
Foundation is 11?
Yeah.
And attractant's 4. So you're going to try and bring people to you that can bring stability into your life. So that you're safe enough to be able to vision. You're safe enough to be able to explore quantum physics, for example. When everybody says, oh, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You know, you should be doing just do your accounting work, for example. Just do that. Clean the house. That's what you've got to do. You're out there envisioning the way to build a mound from leftover, for example, to recreate plastic into a brick. That's your visionary experience. Okay, your capacity to do that. But without the solid foundations or without people around you who can recognize you also, who see you as being someone that they can rely on, because that number 4, reliance is important, to be able to inter-rely on other people. So that's going to be a really strong benefit to you while you allow yourself to dream, while you allow yourself to sort of like go, what if? Because that 11 is like very much what if. Okay. So we're just going to get a general thing going, and you're going to work about 1,000 people this week. But this is only part 1. Are we ready for part 2?
Oh, please.
God.
We did
4 o'clock.
We did cover all the rock in the roads. Do we?
Rock in the road is when there's none.
I mean, like, what about 2 or 5? What would that look like?
If you've got a 5 rock in the road, you're going to need to explore the concepts of travel, for example, and sexuality from a viewpoint that may need a little work it out from a different viewpoint. Like if you are a traveler, you're restless, people with number 5s there in Rock and Road, fucking restless as. Like can't sit still. How am I supposed to sit still for an hour? You know, that's that rock in the road of number 5. So you've got to find a way, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through gardening, whether it's through knitting, finding a way of getting that rhythm happening even in your body, that it releases the tension of having a 0-5. of having no fives. Yes. With anything, it's like, how do I work it in such a way as it may not necessarily fit in with the orthodox? And then you're going to get it.
So I have a question about that too. So I had 2 5s, which were zeroed out. My key is 5, but a rock in a road is 5. I feel confused by that.
Well, the key in there is you've got to be able to be stimulated.
Right.
Okay. And you need to be able to invent or create things that assist you in stimulation.
Oh yeah, I'm good at that.
Okay. But you also need to do it outside of the idea of just being sexually rampant. You need to do it outside of the idea of being intellectually condescending. You need to be able to find a solution of where is home, what is home, what does home represent, what does security represent. That's how that 5 gets balanced out. That's how you utilize the actual ability that you've got with that key of 5 or that foundation of 5 to be able to then usurp the problem of feeling restless. Okay, is to set strong foundations and to nourish your compassionate and your capacity to be a healer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, easy.
Excuse me, Law. Can I interject for a sec?
Yeah.
It's great to do everyone's numbers, but it's just it's like after 4 o'clock, and doing everyone's personal numbers individually, I don't think we're ever going to get to the next part.
Okay, well, let's get to the next part. Thank you very much. I do need to be picked up on this. So next part 2 is your timings. And we'll quickly go through this so that you've got it for your week, and then you can work with other people during the week. Here is just write this down very briefly. 1 is Aries, 2 Taurus, 3 Gemini, 4 Cancerian, 5 Leo, 6 Virgo, 7 Libra, 8 Scorpio, 9 Sag, 10 Capricorn, 11 Aquarius, and 12 Pisces. We cool with that?
Can you keep it up?
Just touch my screen because it's likely to try and give out on me. Okay, where am I? You with it? Just ask me, I'll tell you. I'll just tell you, just say it. Just hit me with the numbers. Nilla, go.
11.
Okay.
11 and 12.
11 is Aquarius, 12 is Pisces.
9.
9 is Sagittarius. 1 is Aries, 2 is Taurus, 3 is Gemini, 4 is Cancer, 5 is Leo, 6 is Virgo, 7 is Libra, 8 is Scorpio, 9 is Sag, Capricorn is 10, Aquarius is 11, and Pisces is 12. This is only a small amount of, I'll go away. Only a small amount of information. You just need that to the side because it's not a big deal. Okay, so next bit on this second bit on timing. I think are we going to run out of time? We don't want to. I don't want to stop. I don't know about anybody here. We'll just do a little bit more. Okay. So timings. What do you want to consider? You're going to go by your birthday. So when you're writing your birthday down, you want to go your month first, then your day, and then your year. So if it's the 20th, it's the 20th, the day, the month. So say it's September. Say you're a September person. September goes first. It's 9th month of the year. Your date, if it's the 21st, it's a 3. If it's the year of your birth, take the whole year of your birth and break it down to the 1 number.
Sorry, Liz. So with your month, December would be a 3.
What was that?
December would be a 3. Is that what you just said?
January, February, March. March is a 3.
No, December.
December's a 12, which is a 3.
Right.
Yes.
A 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Just break them down, the same as we did with the first section. So once you've got those base numbers, just add them up. So you add up your month, day, and year of birth, and that number is your destiny number. So you'll have that in
Say
your
that again.
you'll have that in your consciousness. Your day, your month, day, and year of birth is your destiny number. So mine's 2012, December 20, 1951. There's my destiny number. Add them all up together.
Do we do the 11 or 22 or just 2, 2, 4? Break the 2, 2 down to 4?
No, just leave them as they are. In your end result is your destiny number, just leave it. If it's a 22, leave it there. If it's a 4, leave it there. Anywhere in your chart, your month, day, or birth, leave it there. Okay. That's your destiny number. Now you add your destiny number to get your direction. So the destiny is where you're going. Direction is how you're going to get there. The destiny number, add that to your astrological number that we looked at a second ago.
So if you're born in the year of Pisces, then you add 12.
No, you are not born in the year of Pisces.
You're born, not the time of Pisces. Is that what you mean by adding the astrological number?
And
Sorry.
time of Pisces is your month of birth. That's all. So if you are the time of Pisces, okay, sorry, I must admit. So you add that 12 to your destiny number.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if your sun sign is Taurus, or is that
your sun sign is what?
If your sun sign is Taurus, you're a 2, or if your month of birth is February, then you're a 2.
Yeah, if you're a Taurus, you add the 2 to your destiny number.
Okay.
What was the direction number, sorry?
That's what comes from adding your destiny number with the astrological sign.
Ah, thank you.
We got it?
Fuck.
That's your destiny, that's your direction. Okay. So now, you okay, Nila? Okay. So, I'm attempting to get this done as quickly as possible, which is insane. So you can see a little diagram I've got there.
Don't feel like you have to rush though.
Don't tell me what to do and not do.
No, but it seems like you feel
Look, I can sit here all night, but I don't know that everybody else can, because some people are on the other side of the world and it's nighttime.
It's 1:13 a.m. here.
I'm very aware, but I'm also aware that I want you to practice this during the week with as many people as you can, Lee. So I am hanging in here and I am rushing, but of course I'm available all week for questions, not even necessarily on the Facebook page. I want you to contact me at home. Yeah. Okay. And say, I need to know more about the fucking numbers. I need to know what this number is. So far you've got your destiny, you've got direction. Yes. Now, what you're going to do is put them in the middle like that. You're going to put your month first, your day, and then your year in the center.
A year in the center, did you say? Can you hold it
The
close to
month
the
goes
screen, Laura?
first.
Yeah.
So you've got the month, day, and year.
Do you want those to be broken down or just as it appears?
Yes, unless they're master numbers.
Okay.
So, Law, if you're 29, it ends up being a master number?
It's an 11, yes. We're going to get the challenges first, just so you can add them to your page that you already wrote up that had the ruling tendency, the key, the weaknesses, foundation, challenges, rocking the road. And that's the page we're just on. Yes. So you will do your challenges first. You got this written up somewhere? You need lots of space.
What does the first one say? Sorry, Law.
This is your timing. So the month, the day, and the year So the month of your birth is, for example, say December. The day of your birth would be whatever the day you were born, and the year, which are the calendar year under the Gregorian calendar that you were born, because we're utilizing the Gregorian calendar system for this, for anybody who's Chinese or Jewish.
And we're using just single digits, except if it's a master number.
That's correct.
Okay.
So
What does it say on the side, though?
Oh, don't worry about that. I'm talking you
okay.
through. This is oral. Like I said, it's an oral tradition. So what we're doing is the month and day, you put an arrow down. And the month and day will give you, so you subtract whatever the greater number, the smaller number you subtract from the greater number.
And you put it underneath that first little arrow?
Yes, please. That one.
Okay.
So the smaller number from the greater number, regardless of the order that they're in.
Yep. Always take the smaller number from the greater number, and that'll be the number that fits there. The same with you're taking the day and the year. You take the smaller number from the greater number for the second arrow. And then to get your major challenge, you're going to take the first, the minor and the mid from the greater number from the smaller number, and just end up with the one on the very bottom. You with me?
And what's written beside that final one? At the bottom, we've got minor, mid, major.
And quite often that major challenge is going to be shadow the one of the weaknesses, or shadow one of your problem areas in life. Or it's going to also can sometimes shadow one of your strengths, which means that and the challenges, by the way, are environmentally, parentally, and peer group induced.
Can you say that again?
Environmentally, parentally, or peer group induced. They are not native to you as an individual. They are forced upon you.
Hello, can you hear me?
If, for example, your major challenge was a 3, you'd be shut up from childhood. Be told to shut up. Or you'd be allowed to jabberwock on and never stop. So then what's happening societally around you as you're younger and growing?
And these are the mid and minor challenges?
The mid one is going to have a bit of an effect, and the same with the minor, but they're not. I only ever usually take the major challenge into account.
Okay.
I know that the other one, they just need a little tidying up, just like your weaknesses.
Like your dreadlocks.
Yeah.
What if we come up with a 0?
That's a challenge of all other challenges. So that's the hardest one you could possibly get. Which means that you're going to have a challenge of independence. It's like that's the kind of a situation I get when people are brought up in cults, heavy religious organizations, very rigid parenting, a very, very frustrating schooling, or they've had it the other way with the 0 is that they've had everything go their way. And they've never been really challenged at all. That can be frustrating for a person, because then they go, oh, okay, now I'm being challenged. What the fuck do I do with that? If you got one of them showing you up shit creek, eh? All right. So they're your challenges. So on the front page where you were before, you just add them to the challenge section. Remember the little section that said major, middle? You had that with your self breakdown. In the same place as the ruling tendency, the key, and the weaknesses and the foundation, the challenges and the rock in the road are all in the same place. Remember that?
Yeah. So what's with arrows above then?
We're getting to that. You're ahead of me.
Oh, sorry.
Have you written up the challenges on the front page?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Is the main the same as the major? I think, because didn't you have a major, mid, and minor?
If they're all the same, it's just the one challenge. Just
Okay.
one challenge, which means you've got to overcome or understand deeply. So the best way to overcome or understand deeply an environmental, personal, or a peer group, environmental, parental, or peer group is to get enough variation or understanding of different cultures and the way they work together and how they interrelate, to find out where there may be a problem within your own culture that you need to face without becoming an aggressive prick of any description. No offense to anybody who's got penises. That's not what it would be. Okay, so the next one, the upward ones. So your first upward one is going to be the month and the day added together. A little upward arrow.
Say it again, sorry.
Month and the day. Then the day and the year get added together. All single digits. And then those two numbers get added together in the middle section. So those two numbers that you just came to there, just put another peak above them so that you're coming on to that one there, that one there. So just add those two numbers together. And then the last arrow is the month of birth and the year of birth. So you've got this big top one. Yeah.
The month of birth and year of birth, I see.
Yeah, so the outer circles, the month and the year get added together as that final arc.
So what was the one before that? Sorry,
The first ones is the day and month added together, then the month and year added together, and then those two numbers added together to form a third. And then the last one is the year, the day, the month and year added together to give you the top one. Now, these are called the pinnacles, and the pinnacles are going to work for you. But in difference to every other number to do with the name, these ones can be worked with to enhance your life through knowing what they are. So how you work them out is you take, I will explain this if you need me to, but we could run out of time, which is whatever running out of time means. It's fucking hourglass thing. You take the number of your destiny from the number 36, please. Subtract your destiny number from the number 36 and come up with a number.
And your destiny number isn't broken down, is it? It's just as it is.
Just take your destiny number that you took and subtract that from the number 36. Now, number 36 is a cumulative of nines. So it's like you've got a quaternity of nines, and every which way you go from then on, you're going to end up with 9. So we're stopping at 36, which of course is 9, and 4 nines are 36. We're just stopping at 36. We could do, it would end up being the same number, whichever way, as long as you went in increments of 9, you'd end up with the same number. So if you take your destiny, for example, from 36, and you've got a destiny number of 5, you're ending up at 31. And your first pinnacle would then go from 0 years to 31 years. So give me a destiny number, quick, throw me one.
3.
7.
Huh?
7. 3.
3. So the first pinnacle is 33. So from the age of 0 to the age of 33, if you've got that 3 as a destiny number, that's your first pinnacle, 0 to 33 years. Give me another number.
29.
No, 29 means nothing. What's your destiny number?
11.
11. So your first pinnacle would be from 25, 0 to 25 years old.
What would 17 be?
17 doesn't make sense. What's your destiny number?
I thought it was 17.
Your destiny number is what?
I thought it was 17.
No, 1 and 7 is 8. It's an 8.
It's an 8, right? Okay.
Okay, so take your 8 from 36, takes you to 28, which is your first Saturn cycle.
Oh, so the Saturn returns. Okay.
Yeah, so it all fits in together and not fucking around. You finally got, you're twigging on now, are you, Sharon? Yeah. All fit in. So the first one is your destiny number from 36 gives you the year of your first pinnacle. Okay. The second pinnacle is just from that year, from that age to the next 9. So you add 9 years to it. And from 25 to 34. The third pinnacle is, say, from 34 to 43. And the fourth pinnacle would be from 43 onwards.
So we just keep adding 9.
Yeah. That's it.
So when you're saying second pinnacle, though, is it like the second little mountain on?
Yeah,
or
the second little mountain. So the one that goes from your day of birth to your year of birth, that's the second little mountain. So you just add 9 years to the first pinnacle.
You've lost me.
No,
I got lost along the way.
I've got you.
Okay, great. Hold on.
Have you done these drawings?
I have, and I have my numbers in there, but somehow you just threw in this number 36 and the 9s, and I just like.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Okay, you've got the information. So take your destiny number away from 36. Put destiny number away from 36 as a header, so that you know with every single human being you do this technique for, it's going to be the same.
Yeah. Okay.
When you've got it done 1,000 people, you've taken their destiny number away from 36, and that's going to give you the number, the age they are for their first pinnacle.
Okay.
And from then on,
that's the bit I was missing.
Yes,
that's what that number is.
Told you weren't lost. Okay, so then your final pinnacle is the one at the top, which will be just when you get to the age that you are at the final pinnacle, just put 3 dots beside it that says it's ongoing. Because if you haven't learned by what you need to learn by that stage, you're never going to learn it. So you can keep on learning new things, but you're building on top of that number from there.
So
like,
go ahead. The second pinnacle, if the first one is your destiny number from 36 and that equals your first pinnacle at the
What's that? Give me a number. Don't give me a number. Don't make me guess.
Oh, okay. What is it?
What's your destiny number?
My destiny number is 9.
So your first pinnacle would be from 0 to 27.
Yeah. And then what's the second one?
And isn't that interesting? Like 27, 28, 29 are your Saturn cycles.
Yeah.
So we're looking at your Saturn cycle for this to make sense, which is very odd when this happens. When it sinks in like this, it's like, okay, a little bit like, oh, that's so good.
Second pinnacle is the month and the year.
The second pinnacle is the day and the year.
Yes.
The day and the year is the second pinnacle. The third pinnacle is the addition of those 2 numbers together. And then your top pinnacle or your final one will be from then on for the rest of your life. And what happens, for example, say you have a 4 fitting in as a pinnacle during those years, that capacity to work with hard work for those 9 years is going to well and truly pay off for you on whatever level. Whatever number falls in each thing, you worked with it and it brings you a great sense of achievement. Deeply. The achievements are always super deep.
So we're not actually, so if my first pinnacle was 7, am I adding the 7? Am I subtracting the 7 for the second pinnacle?
No. You always add 9 years. Add 9 years. Your first pinnacle can't be a 7.
No, it's it's 36 minus 4.
Okay, so 32. So from 0 to 32 was the number of that pinnacle.
And that
if
equates
that
to 7.
So from 0 to 32, you would have been doing a lot of study, a lot of introspection, a lot of time spent on your own, a lot of self-reflection. Do you get it? And then for the next 9 years is the next bit, what you end up working with from there. And that all the way through, that's what works for you. So those things will be enhancing your life rather than being of detriment.
Lord, I'm sorry, I kind of not quite getting what the very top pinnacle is. The very
top pinnacle is
where
you
we had
take
the month and the year and
the month and the year.
Yep,
and
I
you
understand
just
how to establish
add
it.
them
What
together.
does it mean? I
Okay?
get that, but what does it mean? What I didn't get the
Just another
significance.
pinnacle. They're all pinnacles. So what's your destiny number?
My destiny number is 6.
So your first pinnacle would be from 0 years to 30 years old.
Yep.
Second
And then
one is
I
from
had the
30 to
9.
39.
Yep.
Third one is from 39 to 48. Fourth one is from 48 onwards.
Yep. And then, but then the 6, if my ultimate pinnacle at the top of that pyramid there, where I
I didn't use the word ultimate.
doesn't
I
mean
don't.
anything.
You don't use the word ultimate.
You sort of said you had the number and then you write dot, 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 dot. And
It
then
means it keeps going. The effect of that will continue through the rest of your life.
Oh, after the sixth day, after the sixth one, if that's a 6, after the sixth one, then you stay with that.
So after the top one, so what's your month of birth?
My top one is 6.
Okay, so the 6 is ongoing. So your capacity to work with compassion, healing, all of those, having a home, relating to family, all those nourishing things will be ongoing.
Okay, got it.
It's fucking marvelous. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily after the 6th cycle. Okay.
I have a question about my top peak number is 11. Does
Yep.
it stay as 11 or do I break that down again?
No, you don't break it down. You just do art.
Okay. That sounds
Nice.
about right.
Just do art. That's it. Any form of art you like from the and working with this, working with numerology, tarot, astrology, all of the mystical arts are called mystical arts because they are also arts.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. Okay.
Okay.
So moving on from there. Yeah. Well done.
Sorry, just one quick question, Laura.
Yes.
I've only got 3 pinnacles. So my first pinnacle, and then which is the month plus the day. The second is the day plus the year, and then
Third one is those two added together.
Great. And then the fourth one is
the month and year, which is a huge big one. So
got you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Got it? Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so got all that information, write that down. So we got all that. You got your challenges, got that written down. There will also the next thing, because I am attempting to hurry, but we'll have the recording. I'll break it up, I think. You have 3 major Saturn cycles in your life. A Saturn cycle is approximately 28 years. So there's who you are from 0 to 28, who you are from 28 to 56, and from 56 onwards, we'll talk about that if somebody reminds me next week, because I worked it out, finally. Nobody's been ever able to tell me what the fuck I'm supposed to do from a final Saturn cycle, and I worked out, I'll quickly cover it, from 56 on, which is supposed to merge the first and the second together to form a third thing. So, but the first section of my life, for example, was one way of living. From 28 to 56 with another way of living, and from 56 onwards, I've joined the 2. So your first major Saturn cycle is the month of your birth. So you, for example, you're in a 2 major Saturn cycle from 0 to 28. if your birthday's in February. The second major Saturn cycle is from 28 to 56, and that is the day of your birth.
If it's do you break down the 11 or?
No, the only time
Just
you break
make
down
art-
that 11 is
just
when
make
it's in the middle of
art.
an integrated circle. Then never again break it down. Don't break it down anywhere else. And then the year of your birth forms the last Saturn cycle, which is from 56 until you're dead. Okay, then we're going to stop on the next bit, which is the personal year. The personal year that you're in now. A great place to stop, actually. The personal year that you're in now is the day and month of your birth in this calendar year. While we're still in 2021, you write down the day and month of your birth and you add it to 2021. And we're going to quickly go over that for everybody here before we close off. And then I'll just very briefly I'll tell you the homework for next week. And that's going to be super fun. That gets super fucking exciting when you do a lot of people, by the way. Super fucking exciting. And you can work out your whole life by going backwards and having a look at it and seeing how it all works out. So one person after another, what do we got for a personal year?
4. So it's the day of month, sorry, the month, day, and then this year. And what does that make? What's the name of it?
It's your personal year. So this year is 2021 is a 5.
So,
yeah. So add your day and your month to a 5.
All right,
What is it?
11.
Who's that speaking?
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Yours is an 11. Nothing much is going to happen for you in this personal year. It's just a matter of like having to just dream your way through it, sleep as much as you can. Just don't take anything too personally because it's all going to be ethereal.
3.
3, talk. Communication, self-expression. Write your fucking memoir this year. Next one.
6.
6, setting up home, family, maybe having a baby, maybe going into one of the health healing arts.
Ask a question.
Yep.
My month is September. My date is 16. So I did 9, 7, and then the 5 to come up with the 29 down to 3, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Gotcha. Next one.
Have 2.
4.
2. Collaboration, cooperation, sensitivity, play a musical instrument, up your skills on the piano. Counseling. You could find yourself counseling this year as well. One-on-one. You could pick up a tattoo gun, start working on other people. It's the same thing. It's one-on-one stuff. All this one-on-one stuff. Important. Next one.
4.
4. This is a year to really solidify what you've been doing over the last 3 years, Jason. So you put it all together. You form patterns. You form boxes. You set up PowerPoints. You set up rules and regulations that work for you. You document everything. You keep paper trails. Any business you're starting out, you make certain you've done all your research. It's about hard work, but hard work I find really exciting. Just don't let anything box you in because that can be the problematic side of a number 4 for personal year. And they can always seem boring, but then doing your tax is boring. But when you've done it, it's great. Okay, next one.
5.
5?
Yeah.
Really got to be adaptable this year. Got to be really adaptable, changeable. It's a really good idea to sort of like have sex with 10 people.
You what? I missed that. My thing cut out. Milla's laughing
It
at
says
me.
have sex with 10 people.
Oh.
You need sexual stimulation, you need intellectual stimulation. What we're doing now is typical of a 5 personal year, this kind of intellectual wah-wah, where we sort of like really sort of trigger what's happening to do with your consciousness, study, learn, but it's all about the intellectual stimulation because last year would have been boring. Number 4 personal years are very rigid. They can be very organized. They can seem boring because they've got to do with a lot of hard work. And it just basically that anything you're setting up, you've got to set it up in a 4 personal year. 5 means tweaking it. You've got to tweak it all from there. Okay. You've got to be able to travel and be amongst different. That travel is not necessarily always to do with getting a plane and going somewhere. It can also be to a new community, live amongst their community, understand their rules, understand their culture, understand their heritage, bring it in, discuss it with them, new stimulations, all about stimulation. Okay. Next one.
9.
Number 9. Okay. I'm in a personal year of 9, 3 deaths already. All old men, they all died. I was waiting for the 3rd one, and the 3rd one came last week. So a lot of people die in a 9 personal year. There's a lot of endings, completions, things that have got to get cleaned out, things that have got to get over and done with. You are on the preparation, you're on the precipice of a number 1 personal year, which is going to affect you for the next 9. Whatever you start in a number 1 personal year is going to have an effect over the next 9. So you need everything to be cleared out that's got to be cleared out this year. It's not a good year to start new things. It's a good year to complete what you've been doing. But you can expect deaths to happen in a 9 personal year because they always do. End of relationships, deaths, finalizations, completions. People finish doing their PhDs in a 9 personal year. They finish their book in a 9 personal year. They'll finish their study as a medicine woman in a 9 personal year. They'll finish their study as an Indigenous man of standing in a 9 personal year. That's what they're all about. They're not always happy, joy. Don't think that for a moment. Okay, but anything that you can do that also means you're saving someone from suffering, and that can be in a hospital situation or an animal shelter or whatever, that also happens in a 9 personal year, but not to start it, only if you're going to complete it or continue with it. Yeah. It was a really weird one because somebody I've known very, very well. I mean, I wrote a book with her, The Feast of Flesh and Spirit, Lisa Engerman. She had a bit of a distended forehead, and we never thought always thought it was part of her own nature. She had destiny of 9, a direction of 9, and in the 9 personal year was when they found out that she had a brain cancer. And they said Charlie Teo saved her life, but she's blind in one eye and she's an artist. So they're not necessarily pleasant, but you can get through them if you've got courage. Yeah. Okay. Next one.
1.
8.
Sorry.
Number 1 personal year, whatever you begin this year is going to affect the next 9. You've got to use your innovation, your capacity to utilize your own incentives. Use everything that you've gained over the last 9 years, put it together in a package so that it's going to affect the next 9 years of your life. Even if it's you're only a sort of like even if you're a feather on the bird, so to speak. Okay, it doesn't matter. That feather's important. All right, next one.
8.
8. Deal with the money. Deal with the money. You know that, Ari? Okay. Organize. Make sure you've got your paper trails. Take charge. That's what this is all about. Okay, we're going to finish up now. Any other questions associated with numerology? Now, when you start, please do a minimum of 10 people this week. A minimum. Now, I just want to
this number. Sorry, I'm just confused. Was it your month plus your day, and then plus the year 2021? And
yep.
So that's
and
like
your personal year. Your next personal year won't start until 2022, unless you are. What's your month?
5.
You're a Gemini, Taurus?
No, it's Taurus. Yeah.
So your month is May?
Yeah.
Okay. So your birthday, May, what day?
1st.
So it's a 6 and you add that to a 5, you've got an 11 personal year.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And that'll last you until next May. Be aware of the fact that your personal year will only last you until your next birthday. So your personal year is not in alignment. Your personal year does not begin on the 1st of January. It begins on the day. Well, I know what's also important, if I can add this, I apologize for talking too fast. My brain runs faster than my mouth. It could be considered a discussion. It is what it is. Okay, what's really important to realize is that the essence, the jus of your personal year number won't come into effect until the middle of the year. And then you'll go bang. That's what it is. And it comes in like a fucking airplane. When it hits so look at that.
No, is it the middle of the year or when your birthday?
From your birthday. Your personal year begins from your birthday. The calendar year of January 1st is rubbish. I mean, we actually need to take it from the day you were born. If I could even go down into looking at the day and month you were conceived. That would even be more propitious. But that can be a little bit not sure about that with most people. Whereas the day you actually expelled and take your first breath, that's when we're taking this from. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly show you something before we get off. This person. I was working, before my Saturn return when I was 28, I used to work in corporate Sydney. And I put people out of work for a job. I was a computer wizard. That was my job. And I would go into a company and translate all of the work that was happening in that company into computer language. And I was working with IBM and I'd set up all the computer systems all throughout Sydney. That was my work. And I'd be working with, say, 80 people in one particular department. And by the time I was finished, there's 20 people doing the same job. That's the way computer technology was in the 70s and the 80s. And that was my work. So consequently, I knew a lot of people. Very handy. I'd also been working in the so-called mystical arts since I was very young and studying both tarot and numerology. Tarot before this, but numerology came into effect from when I was about 22. So I'd got that whole nice 7-year period of time of working with numerology as an income. And fuck me, it pays. Don't kid yourself. It's timely, but it really pays. And if you were to set up a market and put your stall out the front, say numerologist, $25, and do a quick chart for half an hour, they'll throw you the money at. They'll throw the money at you. And if we come down to having an economic collapse and all of you end up sort of wandering the countryside looking for your next buck, I'm your mama. Okay, so let's take that into account. So this person here was the person I was working with radio rentals. I was running their company. back in the day, when I was also was studying all this under this Jackie Robinson Swan person and doing hundreds of people a week. And then I came to this and I went, who the fuck is this? Julian Lee, the 11th of November, 1923. I could find so much brilliance in here because of the numbers and massive amounts of rocks in the road and problems. Can you see that by just even looking at this? November the 11th, 11 and 11. So what the fuck is going on here? Julian, strong-willed, 22 is the key. What the fuck is this person going on about? So many limitations, no middle name. I was so fraught with going, I've really got myself, I think I've got myself a quadriplegic. So I phoned up the person who'd given me this person's name, because by this stage I was not doing first people, I was doing their friends. I contacted my buddy and I said, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And she said, here's his phone number, call him, you ask him. Julian Lee is a jazz composer, musician who was born blind. And he had the greatest joy laughing at me. But it was my it was my breakthrough, because I knew of the brilliance and I knew of the limitations just by his name and his date. These are your breakthroughs, and you will get a breakthrough reading, and it will be a stranger, and you will have to take a risk of saying, what is wrong with you? And he had to organize everything and lay it all out, everything at home. He didn't have anybody living with him when I phoned him. He knew exactly where his toothpaste was, and he knew exactly where his whiskey was. But he certainly knew what piano keys to work to do the jazz. You get me? So from this system, you'll be able to counsel, work with people, give them of yourself, but make them cross your palm with silver. That's just it. Experiment on 10 people, and then the 11th person say, give me some money. Fucking don't you keep doing it for nothing, because that is absolutely the way. Life doesn't work that way. It's got to be that whole idea of reciprocity. You're working with reciprocity. So to do this, to study and learn it, yes. But then the next step is not to keep doing this for nothing just because you, as a hobby. That's not, I'm not teaching you a hobby. You with me?
Yep.
Okay. Any more questions, or are we over and out?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
So we're gonna be doing with the 10 people to find out the ruling tendency team.
No, the whole lot.
Yeah, all of it.
All of it.
All the
So make up your chart templates the way you want to. Keep them as simple as possible for the time being, because you're just experimenting. If you decide to do this as an alternative living, which I'm hoping you do, numerology will take pages and pages and pages, but luckily you're better if you're sitting opposite that person and you've done the work, you've worked out the numbers, you're really fey and comfortable with what the numbers mean, and then you can see the patterns, and you're going to be looking for the patterns of what number works with what, and where is there is discord between a 3 and a 4, for example. Where is there discord between a 3 and an 8? Do I need to work on that? What can I say to that person? So you're using every part of your intuition, definitely mixed in with a rational thing. What you end up doing is creating a rainbow bridge between the left and right hemispheres of your brain. You're working with logic and lateral thinking at the same time. That's the beauty of the occult arts. This is why it's not, you can't fucking learn this shit from my book. You think you can, and then you're distracted. But if it can't be discussed as like a druid's school like we're in, then there's no point to any of it. You see, you can learn it out of a book, but then so can anybody. But you really can't learn it unless you can chew it over with each other and get that deeper understanding from people that are nourished by the understanding of their own numbers. Do you get it? Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. This is kind of like just limited, I guess, to the English alphabet, right? Like, I mean, I'm just thinking like there's probably so many people out there with other alphabets.
Well, I've
like,
got a very thing. Artemis, what's really important is that you do one thing at a fucking time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Master this one thing, get this one thing straight in this language, in this alphabet. It's not, even though it's, English is the lingua franca of the day. English language is not an English written language. We didn't have a language, darling. We stole this off the Arabs.
Yeah.
We stole the whole numerical system and alphabet system of people from the middle. I know all about that. But the first point is, this is what we've got. Work with this the way it is. Get the feel, get the out of this before you go on to the next thing. If a person does this, some people have done this to me before, particularly when I'm teaching martial arts. They'll come in and they go, I'll give you one quick example. One of my young students, his name was Jack. He'd been probably studying with me in Iaido for 2 months, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. And he's got all the gear. He's got this bokken, he's got his hakama, he's in his gi, he's got the whole works. And he knows that the 29th kata in our system is called Mushin. But so does Shawnee Boy. Shawnee Boy was my hot shot. I had a couple of hot shots in the class. Shawnee Boy was one. We finished the class. Jack says to me, do you know the kata Mushin? I said, yes, I do. And he said, will you show me? I said, yes, I will. And he goes, great. He thinks I'm beating the system. I'm getting to know what the last kata is that anybody's ever going to need to learn. Okay. So I said, Caesar. So he kneels in Caesar. It's a Japanese term for kneel, or a particular way of kneeling and sitting. Takes his bokken out, puts it beside him on the floor. Shawnee Boy is standing on the stairs fucking laughing. He knows this is coming. I said, I will clap my hands 3 times when we're finished, when we've completed. He said, okay. So we're in Caesar. I shut my eyes. He shuts his eyes, got our hands on our hips. About a minute goes past and I go, and he opens his eyes. He said, do we start now? I said, we just did it. He said, I don't understand. I said, no, of course you don't. You're a fuckwit. And he said, why? I said, because you wanted to know the last kata before you've learned the first 27 to 28. And I said, okay. He said, well, what was the last kata then? I said, we just did it. Mushin is the final kata. And he said, well, we didn't do anything. I said, I did. He said, what did you do? I said, every possible strike, every possible block, you name it. I'm the best martial artist in the world. You're the best martial artist in the world. There's no way we could beat each other. There's no reason to fight. That's it. That's the kata. And that's what I'm saying to you, Anastasia, Artemis, in this particular instance, is learn to do the first pattern. And then I'll show you Mushin, maybe. Okay, we all done? Anything else?
Yeah, can I ask? Yes, I would like to ask a question that I feel like is imperative to a few people in the class, if that is
Please.
all right.
Yep.
What you mentioned before about if you've had your name changed by Deepol or the likes of which where you, so can we do charts of our names that are now on our birth certificate, and what is the what's the relation then between the salt that adds?
May I make a suggestion? That you definitely play around with that and have a look at that. Keep that as an auxiliary thing to the side, and then still work with other people for the, even though that everybody's going to want to argue with you, Nilla. They're going to want to argue that they've changed their name, or that they've got married, or they're not known by that name anymore. It doesn't matter. Get the foundation known. The first name that person was registered as is they're considered to be, it's the weirdest of things. Like when people go through a marriage that is traditional, like in the face of God, I promise to love, cherish, honor, obey, fucking cook your meals, wash your dirty nappies. So mote it be, amen, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy fucking Ghost, or whatever you want to say in this particular instance. It's somehow sealed in the etheric that you made that pact. And people say to me, why does I'm stuck. And I go, yeah, you got to get out of that. And they go, why should it make a difference? Is it because it happened in the etheric in the first place? You've got to break it there as well, which means divorce. So sometimes you actually got to go through that process of finding A before you can get to B. And in this particular instance, B is going to be all those other names. And they're like fruffery. They're lovely, but they're fruffery. They just add some gravy to your fucking meat, but they're not the meat. The meat is this system we've just been through. And if you change your name later, it's like the need with any of this, I suppose, is to be, to find the actual, it's like go to the bottom of the fucking well. Where's your feet gonna land? You've got to find the place where your feet can land first. And this is this system. Yes. And then as you learn to swim and you can make your way to the top of the well, then you can pull on all the different artifacts that are associated with the names and why you've chosen different names or why you've been given or imposed different names. They won't change that foundation. Thank you for that. Is that
I remember, Law, you saying that it was like an Asiatic contract. It was always going to be who you are. It's like it's a contract you made with yourself.
It's made when you eat a sort of, I don't necessarily think we make it for ourselves. I may have thought that a few years ago, but having gone through the process of getting out of the skin trade and getting divorced from the people that owned me, realizing that my situation is very odd insofar as I actually don't have an original birth certificate at all. So fucking, what do you do with that?
So what's your number?
What's my number? I'm not telling. Okay, we got a minimum 10 people this week. And getting the feeling of how the numbers work together. Recording every one. Write them down. Definitely write them down. But then talk to the person, record them if they are willing. And always you've got to ask permission. But when the 11th person comes a cone, you get them to cross your palm with silver. Buy you a dinner. Give you some meat. Pay you some vegetables. Don't fucking keep giving this shit away or life will turn on you. And I can't explain how that happens, but life requires reciprocity. In the spring, the sap rises. Yes? If the spring said, well, I don't think I need to rise my sap, the consequences will be what the consequences will be. Yeah? But everybody needs to eat. And if we get to a situation where the financial structures of a society, the way they know it, go through the floor, or we lose out, and you've got nothing, I'm doing this because I'm fucking fine. If I'm not, I'm going to come knocking on your door for the dinner that you're going to provide me. No threats intended. Bye.
Love you.
Love you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ciao for now.
And thank you for coming. Thank you.